Welcome, everybody. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio, and this is Sunday, July 17th, 2016, broadcasting worldwide, and we have a couple of incredible guests tonight that I've wanted to get on together. This is the first time that we've been able to do that, and it started with a call from Dr. Barrie Trower, who said he had some news he wanted to share with our listeners, so I said, great, that would be wonderful. And, Barry is only reachable on the landline telephone because he's actually following through with what he's discovered about the harmful nature of Wi-Fi and other microwave generation technologies. And he doesn't have a computer, a cell phone, a tablet, or anything like that in his home, which is where we reach him in the UK. So he's coming on to talk about the latest developments in these microwave assaults against humanity and some of what's going on with that. And after he leaves us, then we also have a visit from Ken Rohla, who's been on the show numerous times and talks a lot about not only these technologies, but countermeasures like solutions, that he's designed himself, incredible engineer. So first of all, we're going to talk to Barrie Trower. I'd like to get into whatever news he wants to share with us. And then I have questions to ask him about cell towers. I even wanted to ask him a question on the TSA radiation machines that they want you to go through if we have time for that. And also to get into some on the bigger picture, what the status is of these ideas with the nets, to cover the whole world with Wi-Fi coverage so that you would not be able to escape, or in their view, would not be kept away from vital service. That they're upgrading now, it's becoming higher and higher intensity, it's becoming more omnipresent. There's also some interesting studies recently about, about the effect on the human brain of using cell phones for X amount of minutes. I want to see if he has anything to say about that, which I'm sure he will. And let's see what else. I really want to ask him, since I recently discovered, as I wrote in a newspaper article, and I think I put it in the newsletter and other things, that I had discovered that the benevolent power structure around where I live put a cell tower in disguise for our benefit, of course. It looks like a street light, a metal street light. They put a secret cell tower really close to where I'm living, so I want to ask him about the ways that you can protect from incoming cell tower radiation, especially if it's fairly close, and whether this is something that you have to hire an expensive specialist to do, which can be, hundreds of dollars an hour in some cases. And it seems like an important thing for everybody to be able to have their home space diagnosed with what incoming cell tower radiation or other malicious frequencies would be coming into the house. So I really want to get to ask Barrie about that. And what else? I think that's most of it. So we'll go over as much as we can with Barrie and see how much we can get to. And also, I know from interacting with him before that he is going to want to come back and do a follow-up show with questions from listeners. So you may already know enough about his background to know what kind of questions you might want to ask him, but even after just hearing him today, and you realize that he's a world-class expert in microwave technologies, weapons, microwave weapons that all the militaries are using, or the microwave weapons that we're told are normal technology to use at home, like cell phones and to give to your kids and tablets, and that you should have smart meters right on the other side of the wall where you're sleeping. I'm sure there's endless questions that we'd like to get more specific input from Barrie on those things. So my suggestion is listen to everything he has to say today. Take notes if you need to. And then after the show is over, whatever you feel that we didn't cover well enough, send an email to me, richard@lostartsradio.com, and put in the subject line questions for Barrie Trower or Dr. Barrie Trower, and I will collect all of those. And as soon as we have enough different ones, I'll just call him up and schedule his next appearance, and he'll be back to do this. But I think you'll really enjoy today's show with a combination of Barry's always amazingly brilliant input, and followed by the input of Ken Rohla, who I'll tell you a little bit more about as soon as we finish with the discussion with Barrie. So let's go talk to Barrie Trower right now, and I'll talk to you for a minute right after that. Welcome, everybody. This is Richard Sachs. We're broadcasting live on worldwide on Lost Arts Radio on the 17th of July for 2016, and it's an exciting show. We're here with Barrie Trower from the UK, world expert on microwave weapons and associated technologies, including many that we use every day, not coincidentally, that are doing interesting things to society and to us as individuals, both psychologically and biologically as well. And Barrie told me that he would like to come on today and bring some breaking news, so rather than using up his time anymore, welcome, Barrie. I'm really grateful that you took a little time. I know your schedule is really intense right now, and I'm very anxious to hear what you have to share with us.
Okay, sir, yes, and thank you very much for having me on, and hello to all of the American people. Since the sad events of the shootings of police officers and by police officers in the United States, that seems to have triggered film crews, and a report I wrote, in fact 2 reports which I've written on the police communication systems. And as you have just said, sir, I'm back-to-back film crews this week. Right. One has only just left, and I've got somebody else turning up soon to get set up for tomorrow. I wrote a report in 2001, and I'll leave this for questions as well. Mm-hmm. I wrote a report in 2001 warning that the police communication system, the airwave Tetra communication system, was inherently dangerous because of its pulse frequency. And its pulse frequency, even published before it came out, is known to produce violence in people. It is known to produce confusion and disorientation and loss of judgment, which is 17.6 pulses a second, if anyone's interested. Okay. And even in the report which our government wrote, this is an American system which we're using, even the report which our government wrote said that they are monitoring the police now here until 2018 to look at the effects of brain tumors from this pulsing system and these microwaves, and neurological damage and any neurological behavioral things which have gone wrong. And we've known this since I've seen documents on this since 1968, when even during the Cold War, when a lot of these things were being thought of or developed. During the Cold War in 1968, the Soviets actually handed the United States and us, a frequency chart listing the pulse frequencies which must not be used because they can cause neurological damage. And even your NSA has published a paper saying that these waves can cause severe neurological disorder, and all of these papers are available. And I wrote a follow-up report from my 2001 in 2009, Then here, it was estimated that we would have over 7,000 officers with slow-growing tumours in their brains. And because of this explosion and the violence from police, generally in countries which have adopted this, which is about 30, film crews seem to have latched onto this, and they're here asking to view the documents, and they're asking particular questions of why this particular system had to come out when we knew exactly what was going to happen. And this is where we are. And I thought of you, and I thought of your listeners, because they're a very, very astute, clever bunch of people, your listeners, with the most challenging questions. And I thought, well, this is coming from the United States. The whole system came from the United States. And you are the United States, and I know you're not to blame. But I wondered if any of your listeners would like to sort of zoom in some questions, or you'd like to ask some questions. Because you may want to pass this on to your Congress people and say, look, this isn't happening just here. It's all over the world. It's the system which is causing it, or exacerbating it. There may be other things. It's the system which is exacerbating it. Why don't you look into this?
Right. I have a couple of questions, and of course, we can get listener questions and hopefully have you back.
Absolutely, if you have, I would welcome that.
I know your time is really tight. I don't want to, intrude on it too much, but this kind of thing lends itself to a series, which we did very successfully before when you were on last time. But I do have a couple of immediate questions. One is with this pulse rate of 17.6 pulses per second. Does that only affect the person sitting at the receiving device, or the people all along the route that those waves travel? Both. It affects the person who's using it, and it also affects the people if they are in a police vehicle. There was I had an article published in quite a prestigious magazine called Jane's here, Jane's Police Review, and the driver of a police vehicle gave me a story which has been published, and he said, I think something like 12 officers are carried in the back of this big white van. And he said, ordinary, sensible officers climbed into my van, which is metal. He said that they put their Tetra airwave sets onto their uniforms and switched them on to listen to what was going on. We were having some sort of riot in the city of London. It's the G20 or G18 riots to do with all the rich ministers meeting. And he said they put their sets on, and he said by the time we got to London, they were changed people. They were incredibly angry, and they were taking off their identification numbers so they could not be recognized. And he said then they continued sitting in the van waiting for the riot to approach, the demonstrators to approach. And he said as soon as the time was right, after something like an hour and a half, the back door was opened. They jumped out with their batons ready. We do not carry guns. They jumped out with their batons ready, and one poor gentleman, quite an innocent gentleman, just going about his business, wasn't even involved in the demonstration. He was beaten to death, and this was there was an inquiry into it. But it was the driver that said that the people who got out after sitting for a couple of hours in this pulsed microwave radiation were not the same
sensible, reliable police officers who got in.
Right.
And this is mirrored. I travel a lot, many countries, and I wrote an article, and it's been published, and I can put in the post, if somebody disbelieves me, I can put anything in the post to the United States you want. I published an article, and I said that whenever I go to a country, one of these countries which has this system, and it's a Motorola-based system, I said, whenever I go to these countries, I am always, my conferences and meetings to do with other things, namely the prevention of miscarriages and stillbirths, my meetings are always hijacked by the police or the fire brigade or the ambulance service, and they all want to know why, since they had this meeting, as I wrote 2 reports on it, why they have so many cancers, why they are crashing their vehicles so much, why violence has gone up from the officers concerned, both male and female, why they have an increase in breast cancers and miscarriages, why they have throat cancers. And I said I am hijacked at every country, and not just hijacked. On 2 occasions, they've actually stopped me leaving the country because they wanted to speak to me. They just told the airport, keep him here. And then it was purely to discuss this. And then they let me out the next day. And I published an article on this. And it's also with the military, because the military also, some of the military use the same equipment. And I had a letter, not a letter, I'm lying. I had a call from an embassy person here concerning the military at your, I don't know where it is, Fort Bragg, when the special operations people came back, and it was on the news, and I think there were 6 of them or 8. They came back, and all but one murdered or beat their wives to a pulp or murdered somebody because they were still so full of aggression, and the 7th almost killed his wife.
Yeah.
And I had a call saying, can you tell us anything about this? I may have mentioned that to you. So, I mean, this isn't a strange phenomena. It is going on in this country, the other countries. It's certainly going on in yours. And I just think we have, in whichever country, whichever weapons the police officers have or use, they are taking violence to the extreme. And it's not all of them. Right. We know it's not all. Around, would you like me to explain why this?
Oh,
because
yeah, sure.
It's an argument used, saying, an argument used by the industry and by the politicians. They say, well, look, if it was this causing this, then they would all show it. And that is in fact not true, because it is known that any biological system or anything that interferes with a biological system will follow a distribution curve. And
right.
I mean, if follow, and I use the example, and I've said it on your program before, smoking and alcohol. If you get thousands of people to take up smoking and drinking alcohol,
there's some kind of bell curve involved, and there's different degrees of susceptibility.
Yeah, you've got a good memory, sir. A distribution curve, and at least 40% will not show signs or symptoms, and the other 60% will show everything from severe to moderate. And it's the same with this. It will be the same with this. But we were warned years before this came out not to use this pulse frequency. I wrote it in the safety report before it even came out not to use this pulse frequency. I put documentary evidence in. but your government and our government said we are going ahead with this because the system had already been developed, it had already been produced and everything, and it was also published that it had to go out when it did, without delay, because, and this has been published and it's in my document, my initial document, and I'll give you the title in a minute, it's on the internet. There was an agreement between our Prime Minister and yours that, and this was published in an international document. It was leaked to an international document and published, and I published it in my report, that the reason this has to go out and pass to as many countries in the world, I think about 30 have it at the moment, is because it's an American system. The American government have the ability to pick up every single conversation which is used, and of course this system is used by around 50 organizations in each country, not just the police, but the detectives, the special services, the secret services, I mean, you name it, and they've got it. Right. And so the government can eavesdrop on all countries that have this, and this is why it was pushed out. And I think your officers and your public are paying the price for the American politicians to be able to listen in, and your NSA and CIA and goodness knows how many other people, to listen in to the secret services of these countries. And I believe you are paying the price with your lives, or going to prison for life, so that they can do this. And everything I say is documented and provable. Right.
I think you've uncovered a piece of a much bigger picture. And I don't think this is a scientific oversight. I think the surveillance is something that they really like and value and find very important, because we're going into a total surveillance society. But I don't think that that's the whole thing. I think right now it's very clear in our country, and probably in yours, that they want to incite violence, race war, class war, everything they can do to give them an excuse to come in and control it by force and taking away freedoms. And so this kind of, if that's the case, which I think it is, this kind of frequency weapon would be one of many that they would very much like to use and keep using.
Oh, I suspect it goes one stage further than that, sir. After 9/11, when Bush signed the Patriot Act that gave whoever it was permission to intercept just about everything that you are sending electronically.
Yes.
I think you're right. I think if you have race wars and police wars and all sorts of wars, civil wars going on within your country, they can actually extend the Patriot Act.
Exactly.
And open people's mail and do everything they can without judges' warrants.
That's
I
right.
think they could be doing this to say, well, we need further watching of the people.
Yeah, they want us to ask for our own destruction, if possible, instead of having it imposed on us.
But there is no need for this. I mean, it was warned of, it was forecast, the documentary evidence is there. There is no need for this to take place.
No, it could all be reversed easily. And if you're talking about frequencies that are known to cause harm being used against the public intentionally, it goes right together with, I wish we had 6 hours right now, but I'll be real quick. I guess it was 2 or 3 months ago, I discovered that there was a secret camouflage cell tower about 200 yards from where I'm living right now. And it's in a church right where they have Sunday school and all the classes, and all the workers are there full-time, 5 days a week, right next to the tower working. And these are being put everywhere even where the cell service is quite adequate, and they're putting more and more and more. And I think this has a connection to what you're talking about.
Oh, quite possibly so. And the other thing, which also generates low-frequency waves right through the planet, and I think I read a list, there are something like 40 of these now dotted around the planet, including the subsidiary devices which will pick up and boost the signal, is HAARP.
Yes, I was just thinking
that is a low-frequency generator through the planet. It is known to send a frequency which will cause anger
right.
and neurological damage. And that has the capability to set up standing waves right through the planet. And I mean, I was reading a list only yesterday where other countries also have them, and there are something like 35 other smaller places which have boosters and receptors that can pick up the signal and send further bits out to increase the standing waves.
Yeah.
And they themselves are known to cause, the waves themselves are known to cause neurological damage.
And depending on how you calibrate them, there's strong evidence at this point that one of those was used to trigger the Fukushima earthquake and steer violent storms such as Katrina, other things like that.
I was asked that today by a film crew, and they said, could it have happened? And I said, and this applies to the American people here as well.
Sure.
I said, not only could it happen, it could happen easily, because when you look at the waveforms being produced by HAARP, the other HAARPs, and the subsidiary technical devices which reinforce it, they set up a standing wave. In other words, a bouncing wave that will go backwards and forwards right through the planet.
Right.
And they can mimic the S waves, the P waves, the Q waves of earthquakes.
So they're setting up a resonance with the Earth itself on a physical level, right?
Yeah, and I said on camera here, I said, what people don't actually realize is that there are two things with this. People think when there is an earthquake, the ground is as hard as when you walk on it.
Yes.
In fact, and you can do this as an experiment at home if you have anything that will vibrate. If you take some solid ground, some solid earth, and vibrate it, it actually turns into a fluid.
Yes.
This is why buildings sink when there is an earth tremor underneath them, and they have to have these big, massive foundations.
I wondered what the explanation of that was, because I was in a big earthquake in California, and I watched a concrete deck turn into waves like the ocean, big ones.
Yeah, they do. The ground, when you shake it, actually becomes fluid, and buildings can sink into this. So there is one aspect. Now, with HAARP and its subsidiary devices, you are able to focus these waves, and when you have billions of watts bouncing up and down inside the planet, and you focus them, it is incredibly easy to cause an earthquake anywhere. I'm not saying they've done it, because I don't know, but it is incredibly easy to focus this anywhere in the planet and cause an earthquake. And if you wanted to cause a tsunami, you could cause damage to a nuclear power station. You could really do any form of destruction you wanted, and we have that ability. Whether it has been used, I don't know, but the mathematics and the ability to focus these beams. It's like having the big San Francisco earthquake focused into one small block.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, the damage you can do is colossal. And all you need to do after that is blame nature.
Yeah, exactly. It's untraceable unless you really are sophisticated. So if you wanted to steer and intensify, say, a storm like Katrina, that I assume is not too difficult either, using HAARP.
It isn't difficult, no. It certainly isn't difficult.
Okay, and what about if you wanted, looking at the mind control and mind influence aspect of these waves, what about using HAARP in the U.S. cities where they're really wanting to stir up violence now, getting these crazy crowds to just forget all kinds of restraint and just start killing each other? That would not be too difficult either.
That is so easy that any child who is competent with a computer and is given a set of instructions to say, you turn this on and this on and this on, and you type in these pulse frequencies, any child could type that in and press the go button.
So, what comes up, if you have a power structure, for example, and people might consider this imaginary, but I know that it's unfortunately not, where their agenda involves creating chaos out of which they want to bring tyranny, which is an old dream, but now it's got the technology to accomplish it. If we know that that's in the process of happening and it's about to get much more intense, is there anything at all that's within the scope of the regular, well-intentioned people to prevent this from happening?
I would doubt it, and I'll use this country as an example.
Okay.
Because I don't know the laws in the United States. But in this country, like you've said there are people putting up transmitters or transmitting devices where there is already more than enough coverage.
Right.
And every single transmitter in this country, every single one comes under the Official Secrets Act.
Oh, wow.
And because it is placed under the Official Secrets Act, they are not allowed to discuss it in Parliament. Nobody is allowed to complain about them or block them or shield yourself from them or turn them off or pull them over. And if you try to do anything to stop the signals from them, you will find a big black van pulling up outside your front door, right, with lots of men with guns wearing black things jumping out, because they come under the Official Secrets Act. And once the government does that, they are immune from everything, and nobody can do anything about it.
Yeah.
So every single transmitter that goes up here, even if it's in a department store, comes under the Official Secrets Act in this country.
Wow, interesting. Well, I know from personal experience that the cell towers that are being put up here, they tell the local phone companies, AT&T and other phone companies, that you have to watch out for anything that interferes with this frequency because, excuse me, people might not be able to dial 911 and get emergency response if anything is allowed to interfere with this frequency. And so they have these technicians wandering around thinking they're keeping people safe to dial 911, and they have these little machines that they wave around, and anything that comes up that could block the harmful effects of these frequencies is targeted, and they can come in your house because you're keeping somebody from getting to the hospital.
Absolutely, sir. And I don't know what the solution to this is. Maybe one of your listeners, maybe one of your listeners can come up with some really good idea. But it seems what we have, and this isn't just the United States and the UK. It seems to be being taken over by many countries now, where you have a government listening in to everybody with the security services. They are militarizing the police They are using the full military to now subdue the general populations.
That's exactly right. And they're also really incorporating a new degree of censorship so that no one can publicly talk about these things. And one of the examples of that just happening this week is on Facebook. Instead of having to burn books, they figured out how to ban not only individual words and phrases, but also if they really find you irritating, they can identify your voice anywhere in the internet, and within a few hours, it's gone. So it's a challenging situation.
I knew that was coming out. That has been coming out for a while,
right.
Because I know that people who have a cell phone and then they borrow somebody else's cell phone, the voice recognition will actually record the original person. I do know they do that. Yeah. They actually they know that it is the same person using somebody else's cell phone. They have voice recognition and the similar recognition for facial features that they use at Las Vegas to screen everybody coming in.
Yes, and they have a new development. I'm not saying these things to be negative. It's just to be strategically aware of what we're dealing with. And they have a new game that they're just releasing called Pokemon something or other. And it means that you can leave your phone on all the time while you're walking around, film all of your movements, and they project these little fake monsters and things that you have to go find. And they tell you where to go, and you do all the surveillance that Google used to use mobile vans to do, and now they don't need the vans anymore because everyone's playing this game.
Oh, absolutely. And to add one to that here, they are encouraging people to have live Wi-Fi feed coming from the dashboards of their cars.
Wow, I didn't know that one.
Yeah. So you have, and the reasoning behind it is if you have an accident and you are not to blame, then you have live Wi-Fi transmission from your dashboard, which has been picked up and logged. So nobody can say it was your fault. And so, and they also have some insurance companies are having, we will also nominate the best driver in the family once a month or something, where they get their premium that they pay reduced. But in the end, what they're actually doing is they are filming everything on every road, and of course you're filming the number plates or tag, as you call them, of the vehicle in front, and who's in the car and where they're going.
Yeah.
So in fact, you're getting everybody to monitor everybody else on the roads.
So no normal spy agency could ever do this good of a job keeping track of.
Oh no. Even the little side roads, the back roads, the car parks, and people are saying, well, this is a good idea because if I put this in my car, and there's an accident, I can show that I'm not to blame.
One of the side effects that I suspect is coming from this radiation, and I'm guessing this because of the public's reaction, is, there's an additive to the public water supplies, some acids generically known as fluoride.
Fluoride,
And they were used in the Nazi concentration camps and in Russia in certain times too. And one of the big benefits to drinking fluoride is that you stop really caring what's happening. And I think that I recognize the same response to these frequencies. And that I just, for example, ran a series of articles on the secret cell towers and what they were doing to people, and almost no one cares. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, and not only are you absolutely correct, sir, but if anybody listening to this cares to prove it and come back on your program, saying, I can prove this. It is incredibly easy. All you need to do is have access to an EEG machine, like they have in hospitals.
Right.
They put them over your skull,
Right.
and they monitor your brainwaves. If you could have access to one of those, or even hire one, all you need to do is not make a cell phone call or use your tablet or anything like that for just a few hours. I mean, 6 would be ideal. And then just make a 10-minute call or go on the internet for 20 minutes or something, or Wi-Fi, and then take the reading again, and you will be amazed at the disruption to your brain waves. You will be amazed how long it takes for you to return to normal. And I can tell you now that if you are a child and you do this, it will take, and you use your cell phone for 2 minutes, and this has been published in our medical journal here. If a child uses a cell phone for 2 minutes, their brain will not restore itself to normal for 2 hours afterwards.
Wow.
That's 2 hours. Now, you imagine a child that's been on the phone for an hour. And you can also do the same if any of your listeners have access to an ECG machine that monitors the heart. And if you do the same and you monitor your heart, make a few calls, and then monitor it again, you will also see that your heart rhythm is also disturbed.
Right, right.
And that is provable, and anyone that has access to these machines can do it.
Now, all of this has something to do with the fact that we're talking to you on a land telephone line that is remote from EMF pollution as much as possible, right? Did you find a place that is a little bit secluded from these things to be in personally?
Well, I don't. I mean, having grown up since 1959 with microwave warfare,
right?
I don't have a cell phone in the house. I live in a little house on the edge of Dartmoor. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a computer. There are no microwave generators near here. My house is screened against all microwaves coming in, and I have the landline. So I'm generally immune. You can't screen yourself permanently from all of them, but I believe I can recover enough not to have them damage me.
Well, that way, you can be effective in trying to warn people and educate them longer if you're staying in a very clear condition yourself. And you mentioned screening, and I'm wondering if somebody discovers a cell tower near where they live, not thinking of anybody particular right now except myself, of course, what would they have to do to screen their house, or is it even possible when you're not very far away?
Oh, yes, it is possible. There's a magazine in this country called Electrosensitivity, all one word, UK. And in fact, there's a website. I think it's electrosensitivityuk.com.
Okay.
And I think the information site is, I think it's es-uk.info.org, I think. It's a bi-monthly magazine written by professors and very clever people, and they have a screening directory. The magazine's not expensive. In this country, I think the overseas for a year subscription would be about $30, and they have a screening device. They have a directory of all screening materials. There are films, light films like cling film, you can put over windows, curtains with metallic thread, wallpapers with copper paint, metal structures that you can put up against the wall under wallpaper, special stealth paints used by stealth bombers and things, nettings you can put over your bed if you are pregnant, all sorts of things. I mean, there's about 300 different things listed in this magazine.
Good.
But if you wanted to screen yourself, it's not too difficult. All you need to do is hire a microwave detector. I mean, they're very simple. They have an on-off switch and a volume control, and that's about it. You find the direction the microwaves are coming in. It's a bit like a Geiger counter. You find the direction, and then you screen that particular wall against the microwaves coming in. The one thing not to do is use cooking foil.
Okay, so don't use aluminum at all, right?
You can, but not the one you use for cooking. You can use the thicker one, which is used in your cold areas, your cold parts of the United States, where they put it behind radiators to reflect heat back into the house.
Right.
You can use the thicker metallic substances.
Well, for example, they sell 4 foot by 8 foot sheets of aluminum in this country that could be put on walls. Is that something good?
Those would work. Those would work. And the thing to do before you go buying them is hire a microwave detector.
And when you say hire, I think it's what we would call rent.
Rent, yeah. Rent a microwave detector. They're only the size of a small. They're the size of a cell phone. They are just microwave detectors. I would think any electrical engineer will allow them to be hired. There is a firm over here that hires them out, rents them out. But I mean, there must be some in the
So you don't need to bring in a specialized person for $100.
No. If you hire or rent one of these devices, find out where they're coming from. Just get a small sample of the material you think of using. Put it shiny side to where the microwaves are coming from, as if it were a lighthouse and you wanted to reflect the light back. Just put it up shiny side and put it between the detector and the source, and if the microwaves stop, you know that's good enough. You may need 2 sheets. I mean, the microwaves are incredibly feeble. They seldom go through 1, let alone 2. And if you don't want to go to the trouble of doing a wall, the best thing to do is just when a lady goes to the doctor in this country and she's asked to undress, the doctor would say, "Would you go behind the screens and undress?"
Movable panels.
Just screens. Just have screens with this material on, and just put them between the source and where you sleep, or where you sit in your armchair or a child's cot. And that will get rid of most of it at the most dangerous time.
What about your windows? What about big glass areas?
There are 2 options here, 3 options. You can buy curtains with from ESUK with metallic threads which actually stop the microwaves coming in, but you don't want your curtains closed all day. There is a very thin film that you can use, like the cling film you put around food. You can buy that, which you just place on the window and it sticks there automatically. That will stop them coming through. I don't know how how much it cost.
But you don't have to have it professionally installed, right? Because that's usually really expensive.
No, you just cut it and just stick it up against the glass. I mean, you don't need glue; it'll just stick itself.
Okay.
You put it up against the glass, or you can have net curtains. You can buy net curtains you would have behind glass, which still let the light through. They would stop the microwaves. Or if you wanted to be really good at night, you could have like the old-fashioned shutters, where you wooden shutters with this material. But any thin metal that is thicker than the cooking foil that you put around food, any thin metal, any metal, will stop them dead. They won't come through metal.
Okay, so this idea that it has to be aluminum is not true.
Oh no, any metal.
Okay. So if you're in
any metal,
if you're in a house, it would be like on the inside of the walls or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. But you only need to do generally one wall. I mean, the mistake people make is they think, I've put this up and it stopped it. I think I'll do the whole house. What they overlook is that if microwaves come in through the ceiling from satellites,
right? It's a microwave oven, then, right?
You've now boxed them in, and there is no route out. You have got to leave a route out.
Right.
But it's not too difficult to do.
You mentioned them coming from a satellite. How far along is this plan to put blimps all over the entire world to, radiate it from the sky?
I don't think they're going to be successful with that.
Oh, that's good.
I do know that they are planning on putting up, I think it's a 2.25 million Wi-Fi transmitters around the globe in the air.
Okay, right.
But I think around 58% of the planet, from what I'm hearing, are not going to have that because it is put up by the United States and the United Kingdom, basically, and we are mistrusted by most of the world, and who can blame them? So I can't imagine these going up above Russia or China or Korea or Japan, or there are lots of countries, I think, where they say, you are not putting a Wi-Fi net over my country, because once it's up there, they can also detect all other microwaves and listen to what they're doing.
Sure.
And they can also use the blimps up there to target and tune in to everything going on in those countries.
Right.
So I suspect that will be unsuccessful.
Okay, although it could have adequate success over our two countries, right?
Oh, it could do, and Europe. It could do. It certainly could do, but I know where they're trialing it in New Zealand. They are having immense problems.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. It's funny because a lot of people think that they'll run away from these kind of things by going to New Zealand, now that you mention it.
New Zealand is the trial country at the moment. They've got them over there, and they're beaming everything down over the whole country.
Yeah. So maybe the escape plans need to be reconsidered.
They do. So they certainly do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, the idea that it's not that difficult to shield your house is at least encouraging. And then when you're out walking around in town, I guess the cities are the worst EMF environment in general. Is that correct?
Well, they will be, because, I mean, everybody has cell phones. You also have people walking around with these smartphones and then these Wi-Fi tablets and goodness knows what. Then you have all of your organizations, the road recovery and the secret services and the emergency services, and so they would be.
Right. So it's just a matter of really taking care of your own health as well as you can, because you have to keep your immunity at a good level. I would imagine that you'd be more susceptible if you're not taking care of your health in general. Is that true?
Well, that is very true. And any dietitian, provided they are honest I mean, there are a lot of charlatans out there that offer medical services and special diets, which, in fact, some of them can actually cause harm.
Right.
What I would do, I would contact the. In fact, it would make a good guest for your program. And I would contact a radiologist from one of your hospitals, because radiologists, they irradiate people's cancers after, sometimes during chemotherapy.
Yes.
And what the radiologists do, and they are immensely clever people, they also recommend, when the people have had something like 20 to 30 doses of radiation to kill bone cancers or other cancers, what they then do is they lay out the specific diet that you need for full recovery.
Yeah. And of course, the first piece of advice would be make sure you don't let anybody radiate your body.
Oh, absolutely. But they have special diets which they say eat as much of this, drink as much of this, take as much of this. And the diets are quite specialized. Now, a diet that will work for somebody recovering from radiotherapy will also protect you from people trying to fight cell phone or microwave sickness. Yeah. It is the same thing. So, I mean, and I'm not even going to pretend that I could recommend other than a good healthy diet, but I do know they have specialist foods. So if I could, with you, I would try and get a radiologist onto your show to talk about dietary benefits after radiation.
It brings up another question too that comes into my mind, is that there's apparently a new network that I think I heard about this from Australia, that they were advocating spreading it all over the country, and it was the next generation. What was it called? G5, or I'm sure you must have heard of it. I'm not using the exact right terminology.
Okay.
It's like they keep stepping the phones up from two to 3.
G4 is the next one, isn't it?
Is it 4? Okay.
G4, yeah.
There was a lot of protest going on about that, but apparently it turns up the intensity of the ambient radiation that the cell towers are allowed to generate.
Oh, it does. G4, yes. And the other thing about it is that it is the waveforms coming out of the new G4, which is incidentally going over to the police after Tetra.
Okay.
The waveforms are so complicated that mathematically it is impossible to calculate what they are and how they are interacting with the body, that no safety certificate can be issued at all for these devices, and they are already being fitted to the new smartphones, the new tablets. Right. They are already becoming G4 Wi-Fi enabled.
Yes.
And as I say, they are so complex that nobody can tell you at all how they will interact with the body. There is no safety certificate. They cannot do a safety check with them because they are so complicated, and we are giving them to children.
And you mentioned the word smart when you were talking about the phones. Don't worry, I'm watching the clock very carefully. I'll cut us off right at the hour. But before that happens, I wanted to ask you, how does this all tie in with the proliferation of advanced smart meters on as many of the dwellings as possible?
Well, they have all these adaptations as well.
I know they're tied into the modern appliances, and they have cameras and microphones all hooked up to them, and they're transmitting intense pulses frequently.
Yeah, I mean, did you say, are they tied into drones?
Well, no, I said they were tied into the modern appliances.
They are. Yes. You can, if you have a receiver now or smart meter, and your electronic devices are monitored in the house,
right.
you can actually be in an aeroplane and turn your television on, or you'll turn your fridge off.
I guess that's the convenience that's being promoted of how wonderful it all is, actually.
Oh, yes, but it also means that if your utilities companies dislike you, not only can they turn your power off, but they can stop you using anything in your house as well.
Yeah, exactly. And just say there's a question about your bill, and as soon as it's all figured out, you'll have your power back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, of course, they know who is in the house, which room they're in.
Yeah, I was told they could even tell what movie you're watching and that sort of
thing. Oh, they can. Absolutely. Yep, they know what you're listening to all of the time. They know everything. They can even, with just a tweak of a little button, they can even listen to every conversation in the house.
Yeah, and now since I'm watching the minutes we have left, I want to ask you to say something about the radiation that you're supposed to go through, and especially in the U.S. as an obedient citizen when you get to go through TSA at the airport.
Well, the radiation at the airport is known to cause cancer.
Yeah.
And you are advised, if you've had cancer, or if you are prone to cancer, or an age prone to cancer, or you have it in your family, you should not go through these machines. You should ask for a strip search instead.
Yeah, exactly. They let them take your skin off, but don't go through the radiation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, when you've bought your ticket and you're on your way to a holiday or something, you know, and the only option is to lose everything and turn back, you're going to think, well, maybe I shall be in that 40% that won't get caught.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of peer pressure as well when everybody else is mad at you for holding up the line, and that's...
Oh, absolutely. Can I say one thing, sir, before we have to go?
Yeah, sure.
I have a film crew coming in to set up, ready for tomorrow.
Okay.
What I'm hoping is that when this goes out,
yes,
you will ask your incredibly talented and clever listeners to come up with really good ideas, really good suggestions, really good questions. Well, they do that anyway.
Yes.
And maybe then you will call me and we can have a longer session and we can iron all this out. And we may even find a solution or somebody that can be contacted in the United States that can actually put some of this forward.
I would love to do that. I think it's a perfect idea, and we need the creativity of all the people now to have any chance to get through this.
Oh, we do. I mean, no one person can think up the solution to this.
Right.
We want lots of people putting in good ideas, and maybe we'll get one of these people who broadcasts across the United States, coast to coast or something.
Right.
And we can get something wider.
Yeah. We'll do our best and try to accomplish exactly that. So, thank you. Our 5 minutes has gone by.
Yeah, it has.
Right. And
okay, sir.
I'd like to call you soon.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing from you when you've heard from all of your listeners.
We'll collect some comments and questions, and I'll give you a call back.
Absolutely, sir. And if you can, it would be good if you could link in to another radio show as well.
Sure.
Get their listeners as well.
Yeah, we'll help each other as much as we can.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
All right. Good luck
with
the film.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your colleague in the other part of the United States.
Yes, Doug Diamond. Thank you, Dr. Trower.
Yeah, and I hope I haven't got him out of bed too early.
No, not at all. It's all worked out perfectly.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Okay, so there goes Dr. Barrie Trower, who had graciously given us some time in the middle of his incredibly intense schedule. He's going off to film with TV crews. And I thought a lot of what he brought up was really amazing. Certainly the police systems, the Tetra systems that he talked about initially that he said were dangerous, are brought to mind the radar systems that are getting pointed at all of us, but the main victims of those systems are the police, of course, who use them. And it's just, Barrie didn't give a whole lot of help for ideas of how to turn this whole thing around. We're going to have to figure that out ourselves. But he did give us an idea of how all pervasive it's become, and the different functions that cell towers are probably doing in addition to the things that are advertised. And I was constantly thinking about the secret cell towers that are going in everywhere, and especially in cities, but in rural areas too, and at least over this country. That's why I wanted to ask Barrie the question about the blimps, which he unfortunately said are probably all over the place in most Western countries. That means that you can't easily totally get away from cell tower radiation. And I was thinking that the only way to protect a house would be to spend, maybe a few $100s an hour having a technician come in and check for these things. But that's apparently not true, because remember, he said that you could just rent. He said hire at first, but I pointed out we don't use that word. We use the word rent when we're renting equipment. Rent one of these microwave detectors, and it's not all that expensive, and find out where the incoming frequencies are entering your house. And I suspect this would be for all kinds of sources like cell towers and smart meters and who knows what else. So now we know that for a reasonable amount of money, you can go rent one of those things, narrow down the direction that the frequencies are coming from, and then get aluminum or, interestingly to me, I didn't know that it was other metals that would do this too, but Barrie said they were, and I totally trust his degree of knowledge on this sort of thing. Also, the film, did you hear that you can put on the windows that lets the light in, but not the EMF pollution? That's extremely valuable. I'm going to look for that right away myself. And then, the reminder of the need to limit the time on the cell phone. And if you have to make a lot of use of it, then I think, as we discussed on this call, to put it down at least, and I'm going to talk to Ken about this more too, but it seems to me that even the listening devices, the air tubes and regular earphones and everything that you plug into the cell phone, that still gives a path of transmission, a frequency between the phone and your head, basically, which is not brilliant. So the less radiation to your brain, the better. And I think, if nothing else, Barrie made it really clear that with the degree of incoming harmful radiation that we've got, we need to really take every precaution that's possible and really, really be aware, and not go through the radiation at the TSA place. He unfortunately confirmed what I was pretty sure of anyway, which is that your movement toward cancer from going through the TSA checkpoint is unquestionable. The privacy issue is there for sure, but I think the cancer issue is more important. And Barrie didn't just said let them grope you. He said let them do a strip search, which I thought it would have been funny, except they'd probably be more than happy to do that. But his point was that even a strip search would be far better than having to go through the temporarily painless radiation at the gate. Because even though it's comfortable and fast at the moment, we need to start thinking more in terms of long-term effect. And the long-term effect of going through those X-ray machines is it just blasts the whole body, and there's no reason for it. So I think that was most of what I wanted to go over with respect to what Barrie brought up. And I definitely want him to come back like he had suggested he would. And I need everybody to write in questions. Richard@lostartsradio.com. If there's anything you want to know about cell tower technology, about smart meters, about health aspects of smartphones or even old-fashioned cell phones and laptops, tablets, anything that works on Wi-Fi, please email them to me, and Richard at lostartsradio.com, and we'll be able to not just talk about it, but call up Barrie and ask him to come back for his next installment, which he's very generously agreed to do. So anyway, without using up more of our time, I'd like to go talk to Ken Rohla now that we've got a pretty clear picture of this overwhelming pollution from EMF that's all over the world, well, mostly in the Western countries now. And we need to know what we can do. Ken, as you hopefully remember, is a brilliant engineer, inventor, and he's also a live food teacher and practitioner. Unusual combination because his engineering background has allowed him to invent machines and technologies that protect you from EMF. And those are of incredible value. They have all kinds of things they can do. Some of them can't be talked about, but you can go to his website, freshandalive.com, freshandalive.com, and read all about what he's been doing, what his blog says. He's got tons of information up there, and devices, not all of which can be talked about, but which can be seen on his website and which can have a strong protective event if you have to be living in the middle of Wi-Fi, smart meter radiation, cell phones, tablets, and all the rest that goes with it. So I want to ask Ken as much more detail as we have time for on these things. And let's go talk to Ken Rohla, and I've got some important stuff to go over with you afterwards. Hi, everybody. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio, broadcasting worldwide on this Sunday show for the 17th day of July 2016. And we're honored and pleased to have Ken Rohla, our friend, back here as a guest who's been on the show multiple times before. And the reason that I especially wanted to talk to him tonight was that we're really looking at issues relating to frequency. And I know all of you have been, familiar. Many of you have been working on these issues with smart meters and cell towers and finding out about the damage caused by cell phones, especially when you hold them on your body or store them in your, pockets or in your bra if you're a woman in the gym or something. A lot of people who don't know better do that. And all these are issues of radiation, microwaves, and frequency, things like that. And so since we just talked with Barrie Trower, microwave weapons expert from the UK, and got into issues of what our friends in the power structure are doing to enslave and exterminate us, which has been their plan for a very long time, I thought it would be appropriate if we look with Ken at first of all, how this whole frequency thing works, and just to bring you up to date and why this is even an issue, and then positive ways that you can deal with it in the midst of an environment with some unfriendly influences in it. So welcome, Ken. I'm really pleased that you made some time to be with us. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Richard.
I thought where we'd start, as our usual theme of trying to pick up the people that are just coming in and don't really know much or anything maybe about the topic that we're talking about. We're talking about these things called frequencies, which I think most people don't really clearly understand. They're invisible. You can't hear them or smell them as a rule. And what are they and why are they of any concern? And then let's get into the negative ones that we have to deal with in the environment.
Well, energy weapons are one of the biggest secrets of the not just the U.S. military, but militaries around the world,
Right.
Because they can be used very covertly, and the effects of them, particularly when using scalar energy weapons, they don't appear to be conventional phenomena or from conventional weaponry sources, and so they're easy to use with stealth and not being recognized for what they are.
Before you continue that train of thought, just so that we don't lose anybody, People are used to hearing words like quantum and scalar and all these things, and they say, oh yeah, scalar or quantum. They don't really know what they mean. So for people that have no idea, why don't you tell us what is a scalar wave or a scalar energy or things along that?
Okay. Scalar energy is kind of the modern name that some scientists are using for this energy that we have been familiar with for thousands of years. It's gone by the name of chi or prana or life force or tachyon energy or orgone. I think David Wilcock calls it the source field. But it's basically superluminal light, which means it's light energy that is traveling way beyond what we've been told is the speed of light, because the assumptions made in conventional physics and even relativity are fundamentally flawed. And until recently, it's been believed that nothing could go beyond the speed of light. Mm-hmm. And now things like the Hadron Collider and other scientists are proving that particles and waves can go way beyond the speed of light. So this energy comes from the centers of galaxies, and it's going many times beyond the speed of light that we've been told, and it slows down. It's interdimensional energy. It's not conventional electromagnetic energy like what we can see and measure with conventional instruments. It's interdimensional, meaning that it can travel through dimensions of time and space, and so it's not just limited to three-dimensional reality or physical reality. And so it has a lot of really weird properties, and it actually is what our three-dimensional reality is composed of. This energy that's coming out of galaxies, it spirals as it comes out, and it's relayed through the galaxy from sun to sun to sun, and also the planets. All the planets and the suns have black holes or singularities at their center, and they act as relays for this energy. And in fact, the entire universe is a web of black holes or singularities where this energy flows through and travels through. And so even our bodies are a web of black holes. The acupuncture meridians in the body are actually junctures of superconducting minerals that create black holes. So our body is a web of black holes. And so this energy flows through everything. It's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And so because it slows down and coagulates into the matter and energy that we can see and measure. So it's really the fabric of everything.
Would this have to do with helping to explain a little bit of how there could be instantaneous communication between far distant points of consciousness? And I mean, I know there's no finite speed that would make instantaneous long-distance communication possible, but it's kind of leaning in that direction, right?
Correct. It's kind of like water and plumbing pipe, where, you can have plumbing many miles long, and if it's full of water, you push in one end, and water comes out the other end. And it's sort of like that. This energy
any hydraulic systems would be like that, right?
Correct. Correct. Particularly water, because water is non-compressible. Right. Air and things like that, it compresses, so there may be a delay on the other end.
But hydraulic fluid in brake lines, for example, in a car.
Right.
If that was a million miles long, it would still instantly push the brake on the other end, right?
Right, essentially.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how this energy works. It permeates the entire fabric of the universe. It exists and it travels through the space in between subatomic particles of matter. For example, if you take a hydrogen atom and you blew it up to the size of a football field, the nucleus would be about the size of a golf ball, and the electrons spinning around it would be out at the 100-yard line, mm-hmm. about the size of a pea. So you've got this giant space in between the particles of matter. And of course, the conventional model of the atom, what's called the Bohr model of the atom, is fundamentally flawed and incorrect as well. But
that's the one we got in elementary school with the Tinker Toys, right?
Right. That an atom is like a little solar system. It's not actually like that, but that's a whole other show. Get into that.
You did schedule a month for this discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but at any rate, so this energy is flowing through the space in between all particles of matter, and that's how it can act instantaneously. When you push on one place, it pops out somewhere else.
Okay.
And you can do this in ways where you can kind of predict where it's going to pop out. Not always, but sometimes. And so this energy is being used. And when you do that, by the way, that is what physicists now are calling non-locality, which simply means that, for example, certain subatomic particles can touch, and when they touch, they will then become like one, and their position and their let's say attitude they will be identical no matter how far apart they can get. They can get millions of light years apart, but they will still operate like they're connected.
Mm-hmm.
So physicists are calling that non-locality. So this energy, this scalar energy, or whatever you want to call it, it's really what this whole, not just three-dimensional universe is made of, but the entire universe is made of it. It slows down and coagulates into the matter and energy we can see and measure, and therefore you can not only create matter with it, but you can also alter matter with it, and that's exactly what these weapons can do.
So it's a typical situation where something with great positive potential is weaponized by the people that want to control everything, and if they didn't have that really disturbed point of view, it sounds like something that could have great benefit to humanity.
Well, it is having great benefit to humanity because people like me are using it for healing and for communication and all kinds of stuff. For example, there's a German company, and I don't remember the name, but they're working on a scalar telephone that, like a cell phone,
mm-hmm.
where you can have perfect clarity no matter how far apart the cell phones are from each other. They could be on other planets.
Probably doesn't give you brain tumors to use it either.
Exactly. If you choose the right frequencies of this energy, it will actually heal things and not be damaging to you. The same is true for conventional electromagnetic energy, though. If you're using certain types of energy, even conventional technologies, if you're using the right frequencies, they could be healing. They could be beneficial. But because our science doesn't recognize these fundamentals and understand them, they choose very poorly, sometimes intentionally, to be damaging.
So if you take an example of a typical conventional cell phone, and you have people, who don't know any better, putting it in their pocket, millions and millions of people do that, or hold them on their head right next to their brain when they use them, what do you do to make a cell phone not damaging?
Well, the reason they're damaging, first of all, is because the brain and the cells and the nervous system, the entire body is designed to entrain with pulsing. That's why, when you hear music with a beat, you kind of entrain with a beat. You want to dance to the beat.
Right.
You want to move to the beat. And pulsing, any kind of pulsing, the body wants to entrain with it. And particularly the brain and the nervous system, but also the cells themselves do this. And there are different natural pulses within the body, that parts of the body one train with, and also in the atmosphere, in the Earth's atmosphere, there's a pulsing called the Schumann resonance that's created from what scientists call cosmic energy, but it's really scalar waves coming from the cosmos.
Is that the one like 7.8 cycles or something in the Earth?
Right. There's actually 5 or 6 different frequencies, but the main frequency is 7.83 hertz or cycles per second. Mm-hmm. And it's created by this energy coming down from outside the Earth, from our sun, also from lightning, and it comes down and strikes the surface of the Earth, and then it bounces back up and it hits the ionosphere, and then it just continually is bouncing back and forth between the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth. And so it normally, in the past, it would do this. The primary frequency is called, it's called the primary Schumann resonance. That one is at 7.83 hertz or cycles per second. So that pulsing our brains and nervous systems entrain with, and it slows us down. Actually, all living organisms, not just people, from bacteria to whales, living organisms entrain with it, and it slows them down. It de-stresses them. In the case of mammals and animals with brains, it will, and nervous systems, it will slow their brainwave states down, slow their nervous systems down, slow down cellular respiration and things to a pace that is non-stressful for the organism. So, and at nighttime, it will it will slow animals' brainwave states down so they get into the deepest brainwave states for sleep. So you get very deep sleep this way. Now the problem is, because of natural increases in the radiation coming from outside the Earth and also from man-made EMF pollution on the planet, from the electric grid, from all this wireless stuff we're creating, we have accelerated, and, well, I shouldn't say we have, but the Schumann resonance has accelerated to almost double of what it used to be.
Yeah, I heard people saying that, you know how important grounding is normally, to go out and walk barefoot on a clean surface so that your body gets rid of all this extraneous frequency, actually. Some people are saying that grounding is no good anymore because the Schumann resonance is all messed up from this stuff.
And I haven't done any testing to know if that's true or not, but certainly I can say some people will say that, oh, this increased Schumann resonance is part of the natural process, and then it's part of our ascension to higher consciousness.
Right.
And whether or not that's true, I can tell you this for certain, that when you take a living organism, and I've done this with bacteria, with plants, with fish, with reptiles, with human beings, with animals, pets, when you put them in that original Schumann resonance of 7.83 hertz, they all de-stress, they grow faster, they're healthier, they sleep better, et cetera, et cetera. When you put them in this other frequency, they all degrade.
So it'd be good to know what the frequency actually is now in most places, right?
Yeah, it varies somewhat around the Earth, but last time I saw, it was around 15-something.
Whoa, that's huge.
It's almost double what it used to be.
Wow.
And so...
so it's not so easy to get to 7.83 as it used to be.
No, you can't get it unless you immerse yourself in an artificial scalar field that pulses at that. That's what my devices that I make do. My powered scalar wave devices, they pulse at the original Schumann resonance.
When you have a device like that you're making, and what you've just been saying about scalar energy is going in between all the spaces in the atoms and everything, how do you get a hold of that to use it in a device?
Well, there are different ways to create them, and actually scalar waves are created naturally all the time in nature, and even electronic circuits create them naturally all the time. I say naturally, but as a byproduct of engineering the circuit, like a stereo puts off scalar waves, but nobody in conventional science and engineering has ever understood this and measured it. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few. Mm-hmm. And so people don't realize that they're generated in many ways. I generate them with a digital circuit by using electricity, pulsing electricity at certain frequencies, and then chopping it on and off really fast, and that creates what's called a Dirac pulse. And the Dirac pulse generates the scalar waves. It's kind of like shutting plumbing on and off really fast. If you've got water flowing real fast through plumbing and you whack it off really quickly, you get compression wave in it, and you get hammer in your pipes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, except instead of your pipes hammering, you get scalar waves. So that's one way to do it. Tesla did it a lot of different ways, like his pancake coils and his other coils. They would spiral electricity in opposite directions and in conductors in opposite directions, real close to each other. Mm-hmm. And when the fields of those pulses would hit each other, they would create scalar waves. So there are different ways to do this. You can capture the energy that's flowing ambiently through everything, like using pyramids, for example, which is a scalar wave antenna, and you can pick up the energy that's flowing through us all the time and create a localized field and also create waves with it.
Would that be a way to get back to 7.83, or is it collecting 15-something?
Well, the unpowered devices will not pulse at the Schumann resonance. At least none that I've ever seen. Okay. You have to generate that artificially.
So if you built a giant pyramid on your property without anything connected to it, it would not help bring back the normal Schumann resonance?
I don't think it will bring back the normal Schumann resonance, but it will have many beneficial effects. But I say that now, it may, because I haven't done any testing of pyramids for that. Okay. And I know that, like, for example, I've been in touch with Dr. Samir Osmanagic, who discovered the Bosnian pyramids, which are the largest pyramids in the world by far. And he's noted all of these different benefits of these pyramids. They're just simple stone pyramids. Right. And I say simple, they're not simple, but they're stone pyramids, and And they've seen all kinds of amazing benefits with these things. People go into them and get healed. The air inside of them, even though it's deep down, hundreds of feet down inside the earth, is very pure and clean. The water's very pure and clean in them and around them. It'll structure water homeopathically. It cleans the air. It cleans the groundwater. It cleans toxins out of both of those. It has a lot of interesting effects. And so I would assume that, and also I did send him and one of his colleagues some of my powered Schumann generators, and they didn't, unlike most people, they didn't go, wow, this is amazing. So I suspect that they may be in the original Schumann resonance. So these pyramids are antennas, and they can be tuned by the materials that they're made out of, and the angles that they're built at, and the size, of course, and various things. So they can be tuned like an antenna.
A whole subject that hasn't, well, I mean, as far as we know, on this, in this particular age on this planet, hasn't really been studied almost at all. I mean, that's a vast subject because, for example, you mentioned the ones in Bosnia are really big, maybe the biggest ones that have ever been found. And that brings up the question, what's the significance of size differences in antennas like pyramids, for example? Because in a way, the whole concept of size of anything is just relative. If you look at the smallest thing in enough detail, it looks as big as the universe. So why would it be important to do the work of making a gigantic pyramid compared to a small one?
Well, a large one will generate more power than a small one.
Okay.
You know, it's like you can. I was having this conversation today, and I just filmed a video on some of this, which will be out on my blog soon. Which, for those that are interested, it's freshandaliveblog.com.
Yeah.
And you can make little 6-inch pyramids that are as powerful as a 20-foot tall pyramid if you make it out of the right materials. So it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the materials. It depends on the structure of the pyramid, the angles of the pyramid, those kinds of things.
Is it better to make one solid instead of just the outline of it?
It is. It is generally better to use a solid walls on a pyramid as opposed to just pipes or tubes.
And of course, solid walls, which could be like plywood in the right dimensions and direction and everything, that is again different than a pyramid with an incredible mass like made out of stone, right? There must be a difference there too.
There is a difference, and you have to understand the mechanics of how to capture these waves and use them, and this is something that I teach. Stone pyramids are made out of stones that are high in superconducting monoatomic minerals, and that's a whole subject unto itself that is... it's a big subject, but basically there are these minerals that exist, the platinum group metals, gold, silver, mercury, copper, that can exist in a form that heretofore has been, according to conventional chemistry and physics, impossible, because they're all metals. They normally exist where the atoms are bound together very tightly in some kind of three-dimensional grid pattern, many thousands of atoms, in a particle, and that makes them a metal. That's what gives them their properties of looking metallic and having ductibility and those kinds of things. So, but you can run these metals through processes like photosynthesis, vortexing them in water, microbial action, fermentation, or other, let's say, alchemical processes or physical processes, and you can break them down into individual atoms of the metal. And when that happens, those individual atoms become superconductors, because according to conventional physics, this is absolutely impossible, because normally atoms of metal have very strong charge, and they want to really grab onto the other atoms of metal in proximity to them. But you can run them through these processes, and then they will exist as individual atoms. They become superconductors. They get really weird physics. They're anti-gravitational. They are interdimensional. They're not conventional three-dimensional matter. They actually exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions of time and space, and they appear as a white ceramic powder. In all cases, they appear as a white ceramic powder as opposed to gold, metal, or silver, or mercury, or copper, or whatever. Right. And so these metals, these interdimensional metals, are hiding in volcanic stone. And so if you look at the materials that pyramids are made out of, they're always high in these monoatomics, whether it's a volcanic stone or even if it's made out of, let's say, wood. You can make them out of wood because wood is made from plants, which will pull these minerals up into them, and the wood itself will have these minerals in them.
Right.
So any material that has these monoatomics in it is going to be very useful for building a pyramid. So the ancients used what they had at their disposal to do this. Now we have things like quartz nanocrystals that are made in laboratories where they have quartz crystals that are so small they're measured in angstroms, and they're so small they can pick up these scalar waves and then rebroadcast them in a localized field. So you could, for example, build a pyramid out of plastic or wood. It needs to be electrical non-conductors. You can make pyramids out of metals and conductors, but you have to understand how to do it, and it's more complicated. So it's easier to make them out of electrical non-conductors. But you can make a big pyramid out of wood or plastic and just coat it with a paint with these quartz nanocrystals in it, and it would radically increase the ability for the pyramid to generate scalar waves. So there's a lot of ways of making them, but to get the original Schumann resonance, as far as I know, I'm the only one I think that I know that has this technology to generate the Schumann resonance with scalar waves using a digital circuit. So
is it okay?
Sure there are other ways.
Is it okay to talk about a specific product that you have that I find interesting? That a small one for in the house, or would you not like to do that?
Well, there's some stuff I can't talk about. I can talk about technologies I've worked with and people that I've worked with because, back in the early 90s, I worked with free energy technology with a man named Ewell Brown, and ultimately he was killed and people around him were hurt and injured. And
he's the guy that did things with hydrogen, right? Generating hydrogen out of water and stuff like that.
Well, not generating hydrogen, generating a fourth phase of water. As water, liquid water, and steam and ice are phases of water, he developed a gaseous phase that was not steam.
Okay.
And it's being called HHO now, or hydroxy, or Brown's gas. But it's a different formulation of H2O. It's actually HHO.
I mean, there's the same number of H's there. Are they in a different shape? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's essentially the geometry of the water molecules is very different.
Okay.
And according to conventional physics, it's an impossible configuration.
And it does weird stuff. I mean, you can use it in a welding torch, and you can put your hand in the torch, and it's cool.
Well, you can run your hand through it real quickly, and it feels cool. But if you left your hand on it, it would burn it.
Okay.
But it does. It burns with a blue flame, just like a regular torch. But when it burns things, it reacts with them at the atomic level. So you get these really weird quantum properties with it, where it will actually rearrange things and literally do alchemy. It can, for example, you can burn radioactive elements with it, and it will neutralize them. It will convert them from radioactive elements into non-radioactive elements.
So somebody thought that was a really bad idea to do and got rid of him, I guess. Huh?
Well, him and a bunch of other people. There are other people that have developed this. It really started in the 1800s, as far as I know. And then in the 1960s, a man named William A. Rhodes developed a water fuel welder, and I think he never came out with it as a fuel because I think he knew what would happen to him, so he just put it out as a welder. And you can actually still buy those welders. I don't remember the name of the company, but they're in Arizona.
So I guess the question is, all these wonderful technologies that are just, are very friendly to biological human organisms, if you get killed all the time for bringing them out to market, what are you supposed to do to get, do something better than the technologies designed to hurt you?
Well, what I've seen in working with a lot of different people that have had technologies that could really, save this planet and clean up the pollution and power everything's non-toxically, et cetera.
Yeah.
Is that they've all got to be given away because of the power structure on the planet and the way that these technologies are suppressed and people are hurt and injured and killed over, trying to get them out. They have to be given away. And, Ewell Brown's mistake was that he was trying to make money off of it.
Okay, right.
you go try getting patents, you go to governments, you go to different people to protect you, and ultimately governments, what people don't understand these days is that we now have these corporate conglomerates that are more powerful than governments.
Right.
And even the United States government,
essentially they are the government, really, right?
They are. It's corporate government. But, people still think that the power lies with the president of, a country or whatever,
right.
and that the government controls things. Well, that's not it. Even the biggest governments in the world now are controlled by these corporate conglomerates. They're supranational and they're super governmental, and they work outside of the law. And so that's how things get done. And you don't bump into that until you do something that upsets their power structure or their status quo.
Yeah,
so when
or if you get involved in large amounts of money, then they tend to be interested as well.
True, very true, very true. It's like, my wife works for a software company, and they have extremely powerful statistical analysis software. And, when you develop something like that, it's not long before if somebody in a government or in these supranational conglomerates recognize their strategic use for it, they will approach you and say, hey, we want you to do stuff for us. And if you don't, then you get in serious trouble.
Right, right.
So that's how it works. I was just down in Miami a few weeks ago at a music recital, of all things, and just on vacation, and just happened to sit down next to a physicist who had worked with covert programs. And, we kind of started talking, and, there was a lot of stuff he couldn't tell me, but he said, it's so refreshing to speak to somebody who understands that this stuff is real, because most people just think it's a conspiracy theory, or they think it's, science fiction or whatever. It's absolutely not. There are Star Trek-like technologies on this planet. I've witnessed some of them, and I've worked with some, and so, that's the reality. Most people are living in a reality that's being crafted for them and manufactured for them by the powers that be, and so they're living in this very limited reality where what they're being fed through media and through the schooling system and education process and all that keeps them in a very, very limited reality that they generally, most people buy into. And so that's why these, let's say, advanced technologies, they're ridiculed in real life. Or, for example, the existence of, let's say, extraterrestrials on the planet, has been ridiculed extensively. Although now there's, of course, a lot of military people and higher-ups like Paul Hellyer, the former Minister of Defense of Canada, coming out saying, yes, not only are all these countries having ET contact, but there's some working in the U.S. Pentagon,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. So it's becoming less oddball. But at any rate, these energies and these technologies, our government has known about them for many decades. I met a physicist, a NASA physicist once, who told me that we've had anti-gravity since the 1930s.
Right.
Here in the
That's
United States.
The same thing that Stephen Greer said.
Right. So when you start hearing more and more of these stories from reliable sources, and also when you work with these kinds of technologies, you bump into people who are working in these programs and working with these technologies who can share things with you, or will share things with you, that the average person is never going to encounter. Unless they're looking on the internet at some of these whistleblowers.
Right.
But the reality of it is, our government's known about these energies for many decades, and they've been using them for weaponry and for weather modification and mind control and on and on and on.
Anything destructive really attracts them, apparently. And, there's been a lot of... Go ahead.
In my experience, they view the mass population of Earth, the human population, as something to be managed like a herd of cattle. Just like a farmer, if you drive through Texas and you see these giant feedlot farms where there's millions of head of cattle, and you drive for, miles and miles and miles, and you just see acres and acres and acres of cattle. The farmer is looking at that as a food system and something to be managed with inputs and outputs. When you talk to farmers, they're all about inputs and outputs. How much is it costing them for what they're getting? And it's the same way with what I call world management. They look at the population of Earth as something that needs to be managed, because obviously with the current paradigm that we're in, with the current ancient technologies that we're using for power generation, transportation, communication, etc., it's not sustainable. And so rather than changing to technologies that would be sustainable,
yeah,
the reason they don't...
They're keeping it non-sustainable on purpose.
Right, they're keeping it non-sustainable because if they made it sustainable, the technologies would free humanity from their control and they wouldn't be able to profit off of us the way
Yeah, exactly. There'd be no reason for existence if they couldn't control and do things to us.
Exactly. And there's a lot more to it. I mean, there's a lot to the story, but essentially that's a big part of it. And so this is why, these technologies are being allowed out or being intentionally put out to reduce population,
right,
to manipulate the weather, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so what part of that would something, for example, like cell towers be doing?
Well, from my understanding of people I've talked to, let's say insiders, cell towers have multiple purposes. They're not, obviously they're used for cellular telephone communication, but they're not always. A lot of times what we're told are cell towers are military towers. Many times, and I'd say most of the time, these cell towers have multiple technologies on them and multiple uses. Mm-hmm. Some military, some civilian, and so in many cases, yes, they're cell phone towers. In some cases, they're GWEN towers, which is ground wave, I think ground wave energy network or something like that. But these are technologies that GWEN towers were originally supposed to be for, I think, emergency preparedness and alertness, and now they're being used for frequency control of human beings to suppress human consciousness, to suppress human health.
So could they be used for stuff that Barrie Trower has been talking about, Dr. Trower, where the government uses social engineering techniques like frequencies to rev up riots and stuff like that, make people want to fight with each other?
Oh, absolutely.
Would that be a GWEN tower application?
It could be. From my understanding, GWEN towers are used mostly for mind control of people, particularly what they call targeted individuals. Okay. But there are other types of technologies that are being used for suppression of consciousness and health, mm-hmm. or modifying social engineering on a mass level on towers, not just cell towers. And, you know this from experience as well, that a lot of these cell towers now also are disguised as other objects. So very often, cell towers, particularly in big cities, are disguised as light poles and things that people wouldn't suspect.
And they're putting in lots and lots of new ones, even when the cell service is quite adequate. Exactly. And that's kind of the tip-off, is that you're getting good reception in your area, and they're putting in a new cell tower. Yes.
Not to replace an old one, but an additional one.
More and more. Yeah.
Right. And you could say, okay, well, yes, they need more bandwidth, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right. Certainly. Right. But that's not the only reason.
Yeah, it's also you can play more video games, right?
Yeah.
At the same time as you're watching five or six movies or something.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, this kind of thing, you sound like a conspiracy nut when you talk about it, because we don't have a lot of evidence. But, you look at the human experimentation that our illustrious government and other governments have done throughout history, mm-hmm. and it was covert, and nobody knew it was going on until at least 50 years later when the documents were declassified. So, I look at this from the standpoint of what do I need to do to protect myself, and so I just I assume the worst and prepare for that.
Okay,
if I'm paranoid, fine.
If your environment is more and more saturated with unfriendly frequencies on purpose, at least at the top levels, they know. Let's go through the things that you can do and how much they'll actually counteract this kind of stuff. Okay.
Well, and this is why we got talking about scalar waves, because with these types of energy weapons, they're calling them microwave weapons, and certainly cell phones and certain technologies are most definitely microwave, but they're also using scalar waves. And so a lot of times when you hear people talk about microwave weapons, they're really scalar wave weapons. which, I mean, scalar waves are technically microwaves but they're so infinitesimally small compared to what we conventionally call microwaves. They're way beyond it, many orders of magnitude, and they're very different in nature. But at any rate, they're using conventional microwave technology and scalar wave technology for a lot of different purposes, for weather warfare, for political agendas. You can use this technology as a weapon to create earthquakes or to modify weather.
Right.
So, for example, the Fukushima disaster,
That's just what I was thinking. People say that was intentional.
Well, when that happened, because I've been teaching natural health for 25 years, I knew what was going to be coming from that reactor explosion at Fukushima, because I had already worked with Chernobyl victims and I had helped Chernobyl victims heal.
Right.
And so I knew what was coming. I'd seen the epidemiological studies for Chernobyl in the United States, the effect that it had in the United States, and so and elsewhere. So I knew that stuff was coming. So I immediately, when I heard about the disaster, I went online and I searched to see if someone had used a scalar weapon to create the earthquake. Because, I've seen enough things to know, so I suspected that. And sure enough, I Googled Fukushima scalar weapon, and one of the first things that came up was a video of the former editor-in-chief of Forbes China interviewing the Minister of Finance of Japan. And in this video, the Minister of Finance stated, on record, on video, that Fukushima had been caused, that the earthquake that caused Fukushima had been created by the United States scalar weapon.
Yeah, wasn't it in retaliation for something they weren't cooperating with or something like that?
Yes. You have to understand there's a battle going on, many battles, covert battles going on behind the scenes with different levels of, let's say, awareness. But according to him, that was actually the third attack that the United States had done against Japan with a scalar weapon to create earthquakes. They had hit two other cities on the west coast of Japan previously and created earthquakes to blackmail Japan into some economic policies against China to help reduce the possibility of the Chinese yuan becoming the world's reserve currency. Now, the reserve currency is what countries, it's the currency that countries use to do business between each other. So right now, the majority of the world's reserve currency is the U.S. dollar. So if Germany, for example, wants to buy oil, recently things have been changing, but in the past, if Germany wanted to buy oil or cars or whatever, they would have to convert their currency into U.S. dollars and then go buy it. Whereas the United States, we can just print up monopoly money, more dollars, and go out and buy whatever we want. And that is what has been enabling us to have the military that we've had, with the extreme, ridiculous, exorbitant expenditures of the military compared to other countries. And most people don't realize the United States spends more on its military than all the other countries combined.
Right.
It's insane the amount of money that we spend on our military. And so anyway, so here's the Minister of Finance saying that, the United States used these scalar weapons to blackmail Japan into these policies that they, was going to be political suicide for them against China.
Right.
And so that happened. And I saw that, and I immediately said, well, I wonder if anybody's using scalar energy technology to neutralize radioactivity, because in the early 90s I had worked with Yul Brown, and he had water-fueled technology that would do it. And so I started looking around, and sure enough, there were people doing it. And as it turns out, there are 61 patents worldwide for methods for neutralizing radioactivity, either partially or completely. 8 of them in Japan, by the way. And so,
but of course, the Japanese government wouldn't want to actually use any of those.
No, I contacted an ambassador who was lobbying the Japanese Diet, which is their legislature, and said, hey, there are technologies, there's 61 technologies patented, and I'm sure out of those 61, at least a handful could clean up Fukushima. And I knew, in fact, that Brown's gas could do it for sure, because I had witnessed it done in front of Department of Energy officials and in front of politicians and engineers and scientists. So So anyway, yeah, I contacted this guy and got absolutely no response. And this is a person supposedly that publicly is, fighting for something to be done about Fukushima.
Right.
So, for whatever reasons, I never heard from him.
Yeah.
And I had his direct email address. So that's kind of how it goes. But at any rate, these are the kinds of things that are being used, and this is some of the most covert technology that our governments have, and they don't want people to know that it even exists, because you can do things like you can assassinate somebody with this. Dr. Fred Bell, for example, who was the architect of the U.S. Scalar Energy Weapons Program, he got on Jesse Ventura's show Conspiracy Theory, which, is a nationally syndicated show.
Yeah.
And he told the truth about it all, and he assumed because he was such a key player in that program that they wouldn't kill him, but that within 12 hours he was dead.
Right.
And it appeared to be a heart attack, but he wasn't in any health problems.
Yeah.
And the person he was with said that she thought it was a scalar weapon.
Right.
So you can modify weather with it, which of course you can do warfare with it, or you can make conditions bad for your enemy in warfare. You can make them better for you. You can actually even bet on the weather now and make money off of it.
Right.
The Chicago Mercantile Exchange, for example, you can invest in weather futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and this is exactly what agricultural companies are doing. These big companies, these big growers, and Monsanto and these folks, they're investing in these weather futures, and they will bet against their own crops failing. So if their crops fail or they don't, they make money either way, and they actually make more money if they fail. So there's no longer any incentive to produce high-quality food and to succeed with that.
Yeah. So the way you design an artificial economic situation like that can be done in such a way that in the real world it's completely destructive.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's like any tool. It can be used for good or for bad.
Okay, so if you're in an atmosphere where the people in charge are, and more than one entity, lots of entities within the power structure, are just blasting these harmful frequencies out into the atmosphere, how much can individuals do to not get harmed by that?
Well, you can do everything you need to do to sufficiently protect yourself. And this is what I've been teaching, and many other people have been teaching. You can do things like make organite, which is a material made out of a resin like fiberglass resin, and metal particles and crystal powders and metal powders and crystals and things. It sounds like a bunch of nonsense, but minerals, volcanic minerals, which are high in these monoatomics, for example, quartz, a quartz crystal, when you have a gas grill, for example, and you push that red button and it pops and ignites the grill, what it's doing is it's physically striking a piece of quartz, and that quartz is shooting out electricity.
It's not flint and steel making a spark, in other words.
Exactly. It's not. It's a quartz crystal hooked up to two wires, and it just gets smacked real hard, and it shoots out electricity. That's called the piezoelectric effect. So if instead of hitting a crystal like that, if you just squeeze on it, instead of putting on electricity, it puts out scalar waves. And the reason it does that is because these minerals, these volcanic minerals and crystals, they have these monoatomic elements hiding within them, and so you get these effects. So if you understand that, you can build little pyramids out of organite, or you can get quartz nanocrystals and coat pyramids with them, or do things. You can make your own scalar energy devices, and you can protect yourself.
Okay, so that's if you're at home or in your office or something, and you hang around in close proximity to those devices, right?
Correct, but you can also wear pendants, like these EMF pendants. They use technologies that put out little scalar fields that will protect you.
Is there any way to tell which ones are real and which ones are just fake marketing things?
Yeah, the way that you tell is by putting one on, testing your body without one and seeing what its status is. And you can either do it with conventional lab tests, or you can do it with devices like quantum biofeedback devices like the QXCI SCIO. For folks that want to Google that, it's QXCI SCIO. Or there's a newer version of that called the Indigo. There's many other quantum devices like this, but basically they can measure what's going on in the body, and so you can you can measure what's going on before you use these devices. Let's say you're in proximity to a cell phone or a Wi-Fi router.
Mm-hmm.
You get hooked up to these devices, or you do these tests. You'll see your blood cells clumping, for example. Your red blood cells will clump. You'll see a lot of stress factors going on in the body. And then you get one of these devices and put it in proximity to you, one of these scalar devices, and that will stop. Or
And that could just be a little pendant or something like that could be effective, right?
Yes, can be. It depends on, the strength of what you're being exposed to. It's like if you're standing next to a smart meter, a pendant's not going to cut it.
Yeah, or next to a cell tower or something like that.
Exactly. But, for like Wi-Fi or a cordless phone or, a cell phone, you can actually, you get these little protectors you put on the phone, and it'll create a localized scalar field.
I was going to ask you if those are all fake or if some of those are real.
Oh, most of them, I would say, are real. In my testing of them, most of them are real, and they work.
Okay.
And the way they work, there's several different technologies, but they basically, whether they can be made out of some kind of volcanic stone that's really high in these monoatomics, like shungite, which is a stone from Russia, or others, and those naturally put out scalar fields, and you can make a pendant out of it, and you can make a little disc and stick it on your phone. There's also the quartz nanocrystals, like when you see these protectors where they may be out of a clear resin or something like that, or a very thin film.
Yeah.
Those have quartz nanocrystals in them that put out the scalar fields. And there's another way you can do it. You can take any material. For example, like I have on my website, we have a pendant that's made out of a stone from South America called tagua. And it's a natural nut, but it's really, really hard like ivory. And you can take any material like that, and you can bombard it with scalar waves in a particular way, and it will alter the geometry of the nucleus of the atoms of the material, and then those nuclei become antenna for the scalar energy around us, just like the quartz nanocrystals do, and they will put out a field. So whatever technology you're using, if it's made in one of these ways and it's made properly, they do work, for things like cell phones.
So they forgot to mention all this in all the science classes I ever had. So.
Oh yeah, I went to engineering school. I went to electrical engineering school, and I was taught all the conventional stuff. And now what I realized after I started getting exposed to these mind-blowing technologies and seeing them in person, and then I started to realize, like, wow, what I've been taught is wrong. And now I realize it was intentionally, fundamentally flawed.
Right.
Because if the true physics that is known by some on this planet was released, it would be the end of the control of people on this planet.
So if you just get really interested in that and you want to learn as much as you can, how should you do it?
Follow me, go to my blog, go to my website, go to my events. There are, I give out tons of information about resources. There's, Dr. Konstantin Meil in Germany. He's one of the top scalar physicists in the world, but his stuff is very technical. But for people that are, that have backgrounds in science and want the math and the experimental science and the heavy-duty stuff, he is a good one. Dr. Thomas Bearden here in the U.S., who is a former NASA nuclear engineer, he's got like 37 and counting DVDs on this kind of stuff, on scalar energy technologies.
And you refer to these people and cite them on your blog, right?
I do, and in my talks and my videos, my YouTube channel, Facebook. Okay. I'm all the time talking about this stuff.
What's the address of your blog?
My blog is freshandaliveblog.com.
Okay.
And my main website is Fresh and Alive, so you can get to the blog from there as well. And my Facebook, link to my Facebook pages are on my website as well. But there are a lot of people now that know about this, a lot of scientists and heavy hitters, Nobel Prize winners, Roger Penrose, who is a PhD physicist from Oxford, who has co-authored books with Stephen Hawking, and he's an eminent physicist. He's saying that all of our physics is fundamentally flawed, that our assumptions and our beliefs about it are fundamentally flawed. And I've certainly seen that in what I was taught in engineering school.
Okay, so what about if you discover, for example, you're talking about protection against Wi-Fi systems and cell signals in a normal atmosphere. What about if you discover 200 yards from your house there's a disguised camouflage secret cell tower?
Well, I walk a fine line because I can't give out any kind of health or medical advice, but here's what I would do. If I could, I would move. If my life was such that I could move, I would move to some place. And honestly, the only way you really know is if you get an EMF meter when you're going to move somewhere and check the area with the EMF meter.
Yeah.
And there's like lessemf.com has good meters and guidance on that kind of stuff.
What's it called again? What?
Lessemf.com.
Okay. All right. And that's for equipment, right?
Equipment, yeah, and conventional protective stuff. They don't have any scalar stuff. They're conventional engineers, so they don't know anything about this advanced stuff. But they have a lot of good stuff there, and particularly with meters, and they can guide you. They have information on what kind of meter for what kind of application. But yeah, lessemf.com. So. But anyway, your question is, what if there's a cell tower close to you?
And how much protection would you get from the kind of stuff that you sell on your website and stuff like that?
Well, if you're within a quarter mile, that's really the danger zone for cell phone towers, from my understanding and my experience.
Okay.
And if I was right next to one, I would just move. I would just sell and move. I wouldn't care how difficult it was. Personally, knowing what I know, I would move.
Okay.
Because even with my technologies or anybody's technologies, mine will protect you immensely, but it's not. It doesn't give you carte blanche. It's not. I don't know of anybody's technology that can sufficiently protect you. There may be some covert stuff that's not out.
So it's like minimum safe distance is like a quarter mile or so, right?
Yeah, but the only real way to know is, you can get protective devices like my Rest Shield, for example. It's a powered scalar wave generator. It looks like a little pyramid. It puts out a scalar field about 20-foot radius in all directions, and it passes through walls and all that. And that will protect you quite well against EMF and even cell phone tower EMF, depending on how close you are to it. But the only way to really know, whatever technology you're using for protection, is to test yourself in the environment so that you know. And that's where a device like a Skio can come in handy, because it's portable. If you can get a practitioner to come to your house and test you, which very often they will, then you can see, because it will pick up if EMF is affecting you. And
so
of course,
how do you find somebody that will do that kind of test that has the equipment?
Well, my website on the services page has links to Skio practitioners and sources, and of course you can Google it. But if you go to services.freshandalive.com, on that page it's got links to lists of Skio practitioners, and some in various areas that I know of.
Okay.
But also you can use conventional technology. You can go to Less EMF and get one of these conventional meters, and you can measure, at least you can measure whether or not the field is detectable in the home and around the home.
Right.
But that's not necessarily an indication of what its biological effect is. So
testing your body would be better.
Yeah, the only real test of doing any kind of, testing for any kind of solution for a health threat is to test what's going on in the body. And that's why I tell people all the time. It doesn't matter, what the claims are or whatever. It's like, you need to test what's going on in your body and your family's bodies, in your environment, with whatever solutions you're using and whatever threats to your health are about.
So your services.freshandalive.com has practitioners in most parts of the country, you think?
No. Well, there's lists there where they're all over the country, but there are links to lists that have them. But I've only got 2 or 3 there that I know of.
Yeah, so that's cell towers. But let's say, like what Dr. Trower was talking about, that in cities in particular, which are the worst EMF environment, I guess, where it's a concentrated population, but that's where most people live. So what if the authorities are broadcasting frequencies specifically to make people go crazy and want to do rioting? How would you protect yourself against that? Well,
in my experience, my Rest Shield devices in the home will protect against that. I travel quite a lot, and I bring them with me, and that's been my experience. And also, we've got a lot of people around the world that have them now, And so we've seen that. You know, it's difficult to make any claims about that because, you know, I don't have a budget to do scientific testing to equivocally say that, yes, and also these programs are kind of covert, so you don't know exactly what frequencies, what types of technologies, what types of towers, where they are, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But what you can do equivocally is, like I just said, you can measure what's going on in the body and then, you know, implement these solutions. And if those solutions solve the problem within the body, it doesn't matter what the source is, you know, where the source is coming from.
Are you measuring things like whether the body is, as it's supposed to be, in harmony with 7.83? Is that the kind of stuff they're looking for?
Well, you do things like you can measure brainwave states. You can use EEGs to measure brainwave states. You can use, I mean, that's a conventional technology you can use.
Uh-huh.
You can use quantum biofeedback. That, like the SCIO and the Indigo, will pick up if you've got EMF damage in the body, and if you're being harmed by it, it can actually pick that up. Now, the thing you have to understand about these devices is they are not diagnostic devices, and so I don't want anybody to think that you can go off and, you know, do diagnostics with these things. They're more like screening tools. And no practitioner is going to make any kind of claims like that. But in my experience, you know, these machines can do a lot more than they're legally allowed to say.
Okay. All right.
You know, so I don't want people to go thinking that, you know, they can just run off and, you know, do all stuff. You need
well, diagnosing anything is about as illegal as treating anything now, unless you're going to do it with drugs, radiation, etc.
Right. But whatever kinds of diagnostics you want to use or screening that you want to use, you know, check the body without any of these solutions and see what's going on, and then you implement the solutions and you see if the problems are solved or at least, you know, radically reduced.
If there are no practitioners around you, is the machinery like the SCIO stuff really expensive to try to buy yourself?
Well, not only is it expensive, but it also takes about 10 years to master it, so it's not something you're going to run out and buy yourself. But there are practitioners all over the world for the SCIO and the Indigo.
Okay.
And very often they'll travel, you know.
Do they have? I assume they have to be right where you are in order to do the testing, right?
Well, not necessarily. My mother-in-law, for example, she got testing from a lady who was probably 150 miles away. It's just
I was thinking if you're talking about scalar waves, then distance, the meaning of distance starts changing.
Oh, well, now that's a different issue, but because these devices, because they're using scalar waves, they're non-local in the energy they're using. So once you get hooked up to them one time and this thing reads your energetic pattern, then yes, it can send energy back into the body, and it can read you from anywhere, any distance.
But you're saying it has to be right with you one time?
The first time, because it needs to get the energy pattern of the body, which is actually the subatomic. It's the all matter vibrates at the subatomic level. You know, every element on the periodic chart. This is conventional physics. Yeah. All the elements on the periodic chart vibrate at a subatomic level, and that vibration can be measured by these quantum devices. Okay. And so the SCIO can look at your body, and it can identify things based on that. And the Indigo as well can do this.
Okay.
And so, but once it's done it, because it's non-local, because this energy travels through dimensions of time and space, once you've been hooked up to it and it reads your energy pattern, it can find you and identify you, and it can send energy back, or it can read what's going on with you, no matter how far away the practitioner is. It's always better to be connected to the machine, but it does have that capability.
Okay. All right. So go ahead.
So anyway, as far as, I mean, I'll give you for example. I've got a local practitioner I've been to many times, and I had to do a speaking tour. And I was traveling around the state of Florida, and before I went, about a week before I went, maybe 5-6 days before I went, I got food poisoning really bad, and ingested some food that had mold and stuff in it and didn't know it, and got really, really sick. And I had to leave in just a few days. I mean, I was violently ill, you know, vomiting, fever, the whole 9 yards. And so I was doing my conventional protocols with supplements and herbs and food and juice to detox and get this stuff healed up as quickly as possible. But it just wasn't happening fast enough. So I got hooked up to a SCIO, and my friend with the SCIO came to me and hooked me up, and she ran that thing for 3 hours. And because she knows me and she doesn't have to worry about cleanse reactions or that kind of thing, she's at me pretty good. And within 3 hours, I was fine.
When you say zap you, is this related to what machines like Rife machines do?
Yes. Rife machines are scalar energy machines. All these scalar machines, they call them different names: quantum this, quantum that.
Right.
The Skio and the Indigo, they call them quantum biofeedback machines. But yes, they're scalar energy machines, which uses this interdimensional energy, and so that's why they oftentimes call them quantum machines. But, in 3 hours I was right as rain, and I was able the next day to go and do my speaking tour.
Wow.
And then, after about a week on this tour, I started getting symptoms back a little bit. I started feeling bad, and so I just called her up and I said, "Hey, can you zap me from a distance?" She did, and again, turned right around.
Huh.
Now a lot of people might think that's nonsense or it's coincidence or whatever, or placebo, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I've tested this stuff enough to know that it's not placebo. I've used these things on people that didn't know that it was going on at the time, and we've done it with plants and animals and all kinds of stuff. So I know that it works.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other thing to note there is that there's nothing wrong with placebos if you know how to use them. And the only difference is that the placebo depends on the belief system that you generate at a subconscious level strong enough to change physical things.
Exactly. Well, that's the capability of the human being. The brain is a scalar wave transceiver. It picks up this energy coming from the cosmos and coming from the Earth, and it rebroadcasts outward in a field around you in combination with the nervous system. The nervous system is like the antenna.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this toroidal field around us, and that energy actually all the time, constantly, is altering matter within the body. This is how cells actually heal and regenerate. Dr. Thomas Bearden, this NASA nuclear physicist, was looking at human cells and how they regenerated to develop a method for neutralizing radioactivity. And I was reading his patent application, and it said in there that he discovered that cells have the ability to not only alter matter, but to go back in time. And in fact, what they do, the way a cell regenerates, is it sends a scalar wave signal back in time through these dimensions of space-time and gets the pattern for the healthy cell and brings it back into the present to create the structure for the new healthy cell.
Uh-huh.
And the reason it can do that is because the genetic pattern for all living organisms and cells is not in the DNA per se, it's in the consciousness of the organism. So the consciousness or the energy body of the organism is where the genetic pattern is really kept. The DNA is just an antenna that picks it up and is the interface between the energetic and the physical. And so that's kind of how it works. So he discovered these cells would send these scalar waves back in time, but that they could also alter matter in the body. And so this happens all the time. And this is how healing work like Kundalini Kriya Yoga or Ayurvedic techniques or Tai Chi, Qigong, all these methods for healing. This is how people can just sit and meditate and do energy work and heal themselves of major diseases.
Well, I got to bring up a question in the middle of that, and that is that there's a guy in Russia. Oh, God, what's his name? Anyway, I read 3 of his books, and what he did is he found a way to use kind of that template that you're talking about that the body originally used to create an organ or a part of itself or certain cells or things like that.
Nikolai Kozyrev?
No, it's like
Konstantin Korotkov?
It starts with an A, and I'll think of it probably when we're talking. But anyway, so what he managed to do is, talking about whether this is imaginary or not, he regenerated his own gallbladder, number 1, which they found the new one with ultrasound after the other one was taken out by surgery, which is a pretty impressive thing to do. And then some of the students that he had were able to do things like regenerating completely lost teeth.
Right.
And I've been trying to get a handle on that to do it because I had damage to some teeth where they were completely lost, partly from dentists and partly from other nutritional mistakes that I made when I was experimenting and, learned by doing everything wrong. And I never was able to actually get a hold of exactly how you could do that, because if you do, it's entirely a consciousness issue. And the few people who have done it right, this one lady had a gold bridge in her mouth where a tooth had been pulled out, I guess, and the bridge fell out and the new teeth grew, and it was on video.
Right. I've actually met people that have done both, regrown gallbladders and teeth.
Wow.
And in the case of the gallbladder, it was a man who was in an herbology class with me, and he had just used, detoxification and live food, and never intended to do it. He just was, eating a high chlorophyll diet, which chlorophyll is very high in these monoatomic elements, and of course chlorophyll is analogous to human.
It's almost like red blood cells, yeah.
Yeah, so he was doing a lot of things and using certain herbs and things, but he said not only once, but I think he regrew it twice.
Wow. Well, did he lose it after he regrew it the first time?
No, I think he had it surgically removed because he, like a lot of people, they'll go and get on a healing program and get healed up, and then they go trash themselves again because they haven't dealt with the emotional issues behind it.
Yeah, exactly. The food is almost secondary. If you can get rid of the emotional things that block you from doing what you know is good, then the food becomes easy.
Yeah, if you don't clear the emotional stuff and the unconscious self-destructive beliefs or limiting beliefs, then you won't have success in the long term.
Yeah.
And then the regrowing teeth, I actually met a woman, and you can see a picture of this somewhere on subtleenergies.com, and that's a huge website, so it may take a while to find it, but there was a lady at an Ormus conference I went to, and Ormus is just an acronym for these monoatomic minerals, and she had used Ormus water, drinking Ormus water, and I think she also was using a product called ACE, which I don't know if it even exists anymore, but it was a really, really interesting Ormus product, and she has pictures, of this tooth that was broken off, like just snapped in half, starting to regrow, and then it, filled out, and it was just wild.
Do you think that would have worked if the tooth was completely gone?
Yeah, because it's kind of like phantom pain, when people have limbs lopped off. I think that the energetic signature of the body is still there. And certainly,
yeah, absolutely, right.
The memory of it or the pattern of it in the consciousness of the being, it's still there. So I think it is possible.
Is this still a lady that's still around somewhere?
I assume she is, but this was like 15, 20 years ago, and I looked for that product because I wanted to use it, and I was back in the day. It was probably before I was even doing healing work, and so I just kind of lost track of it, and then I looked and looked later, and I couldn't find this product, but it was called ACE, and it was really weird. Like you could put it on your skin, and it would make things heat up immediately.
Wow.
It was very interesting, very different.
Am I missing, understanding this wrong to think? My impression is there's a lot of fake Ormus being sold because there's no way most people can ever check it.
Well, I wouldn't call it fake. I would call it because I don't think people are intentionally making it
less
fake.
Effective, maybe.
Yeah, for certain. I mean, most of it's junk.
Yeah.
In my experience, there are a few people out there making it, but
and some of it's toxic, I think, because the way that they're breaking down gold and other elements is with some pretty harsh chemicals.
Well, yeah, the majority of the quote Ormus or alchemical Ormus products on the market is basically people taking Dead Sea salt or some kind of whole salt, mixing it with lye and vortexing it in a certain way, and you get this precipitate that precipitates out, and it's actually a silicate. And it's not very bioavailable, and it can be very toxic because if you're using Dead Sea salt, for example, the Dead Sea has a lot of toxic metals in it, and you can't eat Dead Sea salt. It's very toxic.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you a little interesting aside too. That I forget now who told me this, but that the Dead Sea was actually the reason it was dead and the reason that area was desert. it may have been Wilhelm Reich that said this. It was because it was the site of an ancient nuclear war. You know, and that we're taught that we're the pinnacle of civilization, and that all the civilizations that came before us were Stone Age, but that is not the truth.
Right. We were taught in elementary school that prior to 1950 there was only superstition, but now we had modern science, so we're the first civilization that really knew anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember in the 60s when I was being taught school that, by this time we were all going to have robots taking care of us and, waiting on us.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Walt Disney was making films about, there was a 3-stage rocket being planned and everything was going to be great.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, a lot of these Ormus products, I'd say most of them, I would say at least 95% of them in my testing is junk, and toxic.
Yeah.
But even if it's not chemically toxic, here's the thing about these alchemical products. When you ingest them, and there are a few exceptions to this. For example, if you want to know some that aren't problematic, ancienttech.com, ancienttek.com, they have some really amazing ones.
Okay.
And also Humana Gold. I don't know I think their website is Humana with 2 N's -gold.com, but you can Google them and find them. They've got some good products, and there are a few others out there. But most of these alchemical products, what happens when you ingest them is they artificially, radically increase the superconductivity in the body. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that the way that we create our reality, it's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphysical metaphor that consciousness creates reality. Our brains are a scalar wave transceiver, as I mentioned, and we broadcast this energy outward, and our emotions are scalar waves. Our emotional energy is scalar energy, and it can create an altered matter, particularly when there's a strong emotional charge.
This is what gives power to thought patterns, right? The emotion behind them.
Yes, and this is why, now that more knowledge and information is coming out to the public, this is why you've got these movies like The Secret and and all these empowerment coaches and teachers telling you that what you focus on you create, and consciousness creates reality. And sages throughout time have said this. But the reason is because it's not like a metaphysical conceit. We literally are creating our reality individually and collectively by manipulating this scalar energy, which can create an altered matter.
So after we go through all of this technology cycle, we could end up eventually coming right back to the point that, look, you just have to do the work in yourself to get a handle on complete direction of emotional and mental energies and patterns. And
Precisely.
Once you do that, you can surpass any kind of artificial technology.
Precisely. The most powerful technology in the universe is biology.
Yeah.
And the technologies that we have created outside of ourselves are clumsy reproductions to enable us to do things that we could do completely with our own biology if we were that developed, but we're not.
Yeah, so it might be a good thing to put some attention on.
Yes. And so these, I've met so many people who have had major problems, sometimes life-threatening problems, when they ingest these alchemical forms of Ormus or these monoatomics, because what they do is anyway, it was getting back to how you create your reality. You're sending out these scalar waves. They slow down, coagulate into matter, and they draw into this, your reality to you, and this is how you're creating your reality, individually and collectively. So when you ingest these monoatomics, they artificially and radically jack up the superconductivity in the DNA and in the brain neural pathways and in the nervous system and the acupuncture meridians and the chakras, which are just large junctures of these minerals on the spine. And what winds up happening is you start manifesting things that you didn't intend. And what about
what's being projected at you from frequencies that aren't friendly? And before they wouldn't have had much effect, but if they find you to be superconductive and resonant, then it could be another situation. Right?
Precisely. It's a double-edged sword. And so what I've seen in my experience with when people do this is, at first they get a little taste of this stuff, and all of a sudden they're having all these synchronicities happening, and they're all excited about it, and their health improves, and they get all jazzed about it. But then it never fails. They wind up having disastrous results, and very often they don't even recognize it because they can be deep in denial. And so you cannot short circuit the reason that we're all here. We're all here to learn and to grow as spiritual beings, and in this case, physical beings. Mm-hmm. But that's why we're here. That's why we're having these dramas. Everything that we're involved in is just what I call a karmic drama that we're acting out in order to grow and to learn as a being.
And we've been holding the complete solution since the beginning, right? Right.
So if you ingest these alchemical monoatomics into your body, you jack up the superconductivity, you're going to throw yourself way off. You're going to manifest things you didn't intend. You're going to have emotional issues and all kinds of stuff.
Specifically because it works, right?
Because it works, but you're not spiritually ready for it.
Yeah.
Imagine if everything you thought came true.
Most people would vaporize immediately.
Exactly. I was out driving around, all the cars around me would be gone.
Well, yeah. I mean, you should actually think and feel such that could happen, and then you would be training correctly, right?
Well, but the thing of it is, it's like when you're not spiritually ready for something, the universe doesn't give you anything you're not ready for.
Right.
And even with these monoatomics, if you take these monoatomics, you're going to learn some hard lessons. If you take these unnatural forms. Now, you can take the natural forms all day long, and they're fantastic, and they're super healing, and they expand consciousness, and they connect you more to yourself and to other people and to all life, and they make you more intuitive and more psychic, et cetera, et cetera. But those forms are when you feed these monoatomics to plants or to ferment, or you take naturally occurring water, or you vortex water in magnetic fields. You create these monoatomics in natural forms, and you ingest them.
Well,
you
also
don't get that radical.
Some of the old clean salts that are from oceans that were not polluted a few million years ago, like Himalayan or the Bolivian red salts or things like that. Some of those are really good and safe as well, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They've got great stuff.
But when you're sending them through these alchemical processes, it creates a structure that the body doesn't recognize, and it throws it off in a big way.
Right. I just mean if you eat them on your food.
Oh, and you eat them, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Because then you're only going to metabolize what the body can metabolize.
Exactly. It's like putting it in the soil for a plant to use.
Exactly. That's it. If you want to jack up these things and get them in your body, what you do is get volcanic rock powders, for example, and feed them to plants or feed them to ferments, and they will break them down into natural forms that the body can uptake. And what will happen is you'll heal up, you'll become smarter, you'll become more beautiful, you'll become more empathic, more intuitive, more compassionate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
and this is nothing new. It's ancient knowledge, and we already know about this stuff. It's doing things like live food programs, like what Hippocrates Institute or Gabriel Cousins at the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center is teaching, or the Living Foods Institute, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
This stuff, it's the tried and true ancient stuff that we already know.
Right. Right.
And so when you start thinking, I can use this technological means to short-circuit my spiritual lessons, you're just going to have an even bigger lesson, and you're going to get smacked upside the head by the universe.
Yeah, it's part of the expanded definition of Newton's action and reaction.
Yeah. So, people do it, and I would just say if you're going to do it, if you're going to do these alchemical Ormus products or make your own, be very careful, take small doses, and cut yourself off.
Right, right.
And I did it.
You've got all kinds.
I experimented with it.
You've got all kinds.
I did it a few times and cut it off.
You have a lot of stuff available on your site, your blog, and other places like that. Videos, YouTube. I mean, people could really learn a lot from what you've already put out. That's available now.
Yeah, my blog is just loaded with years and years of information I've been putting out for many years.
Okay.
I did for example, one of my favorite articles to write was years ago. It was actually when you might remember this. It was when James Ray from the movie The Secret
Yeah.
did a sweat lodge in Arizona, and several people died.
Yeah.
That very weekend, wouldn't you know it, I hosted a sweat lodge at my house. Now, I don't think I've ever hosted a sweat lodge at my house before or since.
Huh.
And it just so happens that weekend I hosted a sweat lodge. And I had this Yaqui Indian chief who came, and he ran the lodge, and he did it, right according to the ancient traditions.
Yeah.
We built the lodge properly out of saplings and natural materials, and no plastic tarps or other things
that's
that
good.
would timber it. And so on the second day of the lodge, this is like a 3-day lodge, and somebody comes to the lodge and they say, is this safe? We heard some people died at this lodge. And I was like, what? I said, yeah, this is safe. And we even let people lift the edge of the lodge up so that the air could come in and cool off. If they got out, in bad shape. But at any rate, this happened. And so anyway, as the Yaqui Indian chief, I got to know him, and we really hit it off. And we saw very much eye to eye on things. But he would use a different language to explain the experience than I did. Mm-hmm. And yet we were saying the same things, and we both could see that,
Yeah.
He would say things like, the earth eats blood.
Right.
And he said, therefore, this is why humans have, shed blood in wars. This is why women in the olden days menstruated on the earth. And this is why in the sweat lodge, if a woman is menstruating, they cannot go in the lodge. They have to have a separate lodge built called the Moon Lodge, where they do the lodge, kind of third party, so to speak. Okay. And so anyway, we're discussing all of this stuff, and I was looking at what we're doing. We were having this lodge on an island in my backyard. It was surrounded by tidal water, actually, that goes all the way out to the ocean. And we're sweating profusely in this lodge, and our sweat, water's a homeopathic solution, meaning that the structure of it can be ingested, and it can affect things energetically in the body. It can trigger healing responses. It also has an energy to it. We're sweating, and we're creating this homeopathic solution of our sweat. It's dripping into the soil, and the soil is full of, crystals. Rocks and soil are crystals.
Yeah.
And crystals take on charge. They take on frequency. And so we're charging these crystals in the soil and imparting this homeopathic frequency into the soil, and that's spreading out, and then it rains and it washes that frequency out and farther out into the soil and into the water surrounding the island. Mm-hmm. It was a very small island. Yeah. And that, is energetically influencing the water in this tributary, which is, connected to the ocean. Right. And so I'm thinking, wow, I wonder what effect this is having. And while I'm thinking this, here's this Yaqui Indian chief who is saying this same thing in the terms of his frame of reference, which is, that the lodge is like a mother's womb, and that we're all in there to cleanse emotionally and physically, and that what we're doing radiates outward throughout time as well as space, and on and on and on. So I wound up writing an article about it called Sweat Lodge Physics in the Quantum Universe.
Oh, neat.
And kind of made these comparisons between his reality and my reality and the experiencing of this. But we were both describing it.
Yeah.
The same things going on.
If we can get beyond differences in words to what is actually being described, it would be a real help for harmony between people of different backgrounds.
Precisely. That's why I don't get hung up on religions and what they say about these things, because all the religions have talked about these concepts that we're talking about with formists, with scalar energy and all these things. They called it different things, but they were talking about the same thing. So if you don't get hung up on the languaging and look at what they're talking about, you can radically expand your understanding of what's going on and the history of it and the influence of it on Earth. Yeah,
you can actually practice that every time you're talking to anybody. Is go ahead and be talking, but look past the words. And
precisely.
And learn how to feel what the person means.
Exactly. I was having, a couple weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a man who had worked with a lot of advanced technologies, and he was aware of these things, and he had worked with some of the people I had worked with, and so we were having this really nice conversation because we didn't have to explain things to each other. But he came from a very Christian background, and some of these things, like I was talking about extraterrestrials, and he called them demons.
Yeah.
But when we started describing them in detail, we both agreed on this is what they are. We're just calling them something different.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I didn't get hung up on it, but there was another person who was with us who did. He started getting hung up on the religious wording of it, and I was like, no, we're saying the same thing.
A lot of that hang up comes out of fear. And
programming.
Yeah, fear and programming, and if those things can be dropped, in the realization that whatever the reality is, it's something that's really good that you do not have to be afraid of, and it's safe to go ahead and explore and find out what it really is.
Exactly.
But anyway, listen, we're a little over, so we need to wrap it up, and unfortunately, I think we could go for another 20 hours easy, and I hope that we can do some more installments, because there's a few other interesting things that we need to talk about.
Well, we certainly can, and we didn't talk a lot about solutions, like practical solutions that people can use on a day-to-day basis, but there are always solutions for all these threats to our health and well-being, always have been, always will be, because the fundamental trump card that we have is that consciousness creates reality.
Right.
And when you truly understand that, then what you understand is that this energy coming from the center of the galaxy, this God consciousness, these scalar waves, it always comes with polarity. And so the frequencies and the polarities that are creating the consciousness that creates these problems, the opposite polarities are always simultaneously creating the solutions.
Yeah,
and I've worked with enough of them.
Right.
Yeah, and I've seen enough of them that I know this for sure. So all you have to do is start looking around for the solutions, and you will find them.
Yeah.
And, I talk about them a lot, and I point people in the direction of other people who have these solutions. But you can certainly protect yourself against these microwave weapons, against cell phones, against cell towers, against Wi-Fi. You can protect yourself against all this stuff. But it also involves personal responsibility and using these harmful technologies responsibly. If you think you're going to be able to put a cell phone up to your head 2,600 minutes a month and just have a little button on it that's going to protect you, you're dead wrong.
Right.
You've got to use, for example, an air tube headset, minimize your use. Don't use your phone as a computer. Use it as a phone and as a utility that you need.
When you need to, exactly.
But don't be emailing on it. Don't be, spending all your life on it. You do those things, you'll be fine.
Well, also, those, I'm the one who just said we have to wrap it up, but I have to ask you this question. Those little air tube things that you plug into the phone and put in your ears and listen, what bothers me about those compared to using the speakerphone is that they kind of give a track along which some kind of energy could flow compared to just using the speaker. Do you think there's any reality to that concern or not?
Absolutely there is. It's always best to put your phone on speaker if you can and keep it away from you.
Right. Like put it on a table or something, right?
Right. And the reason that these air tube headsets were developed was because it was recognized that the wire and leading up to that microphone that you stick in your ear, that sends a signal into your skull.
Yeah,
and so just by removing it 6 inches radically reduces that exposure.
Right, but the air tube,
the end of that thing is 6 inches away, so you're still getting exposed.
Well, and the air tube goes right into your ear, right? So
the air tube does.
Yeah, so that, it might not be metal, but it's definitely a visible shape that some kind of energy could track along compared to using a speakerphone.
Well, the energy coming off of the cell phone headset is going to be conventional electromagnetic energy, and that's what does the damage. And so keeping it, on away from you is going to, have a very significant impact. But you've got that wire draped across you. If you're sitting there with your phone and this thing plugged in your ear, you still got that wire draped across you.
Okay, so if you can, put it down on something and put the speaker on.
Right. There's times, for example, when I'm traveling and I can't use it on speaker because I'm in a car that's making a lot of noise or something, and I'll use an air tube headset. But any other time, if I can, I'm using it on a speaker.
Okay, and if you have to carry it with you sometime, because you don't want...
I always turn it to airplane mode. when I'm carrying.
And then it's not.
Or I turn it off.
It doesn't radiating. It's not radiating when you do that.
Not much, just a teensy. It's not broadcasting. It has a teensy bit of EMF just from the battery and the powering of the phone. But you can turn it off completely if you want to.
What are those electronic modules that have a residual charge? Is that a capacitor?
Yes.
Is for like a stored charge even after you turn something off? So if it has capacitors in it, is it still charged even if you turned it off and took the battery out, basically?
Well, it probably does, but I've used EMF meters on cell phones on and off in various modes, and there's none detectable on a conventional EMF meter when it's off. Okay. So, I mean, for practical purposes, you turn it off, or even in airplane mode, it's fairly safe.
Okay. All right.
At least from that standpoint. That doesn't include spying on you. Those kinds of things. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah, the spying thing is reliable all the time.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Ken. That was wonderful. I really appreciate all the time. And
my pleasure, Richard. Anytime.
Do it again soon, and hold on, we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Okay.
Okay, that was Ken Rohla from Florida, our friend, engineer and inventor, with lots of incredible ideas and stretching the envelope of accustomed thought to new areas that we have a lot to learn in. And I think that was the clearest I've ever heard him talk about scalar energy, for one thing. It's one of those words, like I told him, that's similar to quantum, or I don't know what other ones are like that, but you know what I mean. It's like words that are supposed to sound impressive, but most people don't even really know what they mean precisely, except Ken does. And his explanations were very good. And we talked about the speed of light not being the real, speed limit that things move in, and there is the capability to transmit certain kinds of energy and thought and understanding over basically unlimited distances instantaneously, which brings up all kinds of interesting questions following from that. And I realized, that he did mention the Hadron Collider, or what people call CERN. I realize I've been looking for somebody for months and months, if not longer, especially after talking to Dr. Gabriel Cousens, to try to find somebody who really knows what was going on at CERN. And maybe we did. Maybe Ken is that person. So I'll have to get back in touch with him and see if he'd like to consider another show or part of a show on CERN. We talked about the Schumann resonance a lot. I thought that was really important, and I have heard people like Paul Harding, for example, who's a guy that tests your home for dirty electricity and incoming cell tower and smart meter radiation and that sort of thing, and tells you where to block it. People like that are saying that the Schumann resonance, the natural frequency of the Earth, is all out of balance, and Ken confirmed that that's true. And I mean, we can't stop grounding, those of us who understand the importance of walking outside to speed up healing barefoot on a safe surface that doesn't have broken, sharp things on it, but grass or sand or a creek or things like that. It really resets the energy. But Ken was able to confirm that the Schumann resonance is now faster than it's supposed to be. And exactly why that is, I don't know, but there are both positive and negative components that could be involved. Interesting subject for more discussion later. And then we also talked about pyramids. I was really glad we got to that because, a lot of people talk about pyramids being a superstitious thing. It's not even hooked up to a power source it doesn't even have Wi-Fi connected to it, so it couldn't really be anything real, right? Well, no, that's not true, because antennas of different geometrical shapes and proportions are capable of transmitting and picking up frequencies that are very powerful. And pyramids happen to be, built according to very specific ratios of the length of the sides versus the base and the height and all this stuff. And no, they do some really powerful things. There's one that has been built not too far from Moscow that I don't remember, it's like 120 feet tall or something, and it's having very unusual, positive but unexpected results on the immediate environment, one of which was that they discovered an extinct plant variety growing near the base of it. I find that pretty interesting. So we don't even have the beginning of probably Pyramids 101 as it was taught thousands of years ago, and we got some catching up to do. The best we can do is say, oh, it's all evil because we don't know about it. Really dumb. And these are quite advanced low-tech technologies that have vast potential for helping to heal the world and individuals. So also I thought it was really interesting about the Brown's gas. You can find a lot of that on YouTube, HHO gas, fascinating stuff, where it just has some very unexpected properties to the blue flame. It can weld, but then it's possible that it doesn't do damage to people. I mean, see what you think about that on YouTube if you have a chance. And then the skio checking, I thought that was interesting. We'll all have to look that up and see if there are people around us who do that. I know he recommended the site ancienttech.com. You might want to look that up. ancienttech.com. Boy, so many good references. There's also always so much information that comes out when Ken is on. And so anyway, listen to it more than once if you want, because we're going to have the archive up soon. Doug always gets that posted pretty quickly. And remember, our websites are kind of being renewed right now. We're merging the two shows together, not the two shows, the two websites and two legal entities, Lost Arts Radio with Lost Arts Research Institute. They're both going to be contained under the Research Institute, nonprofit, approved by the IRS, tax-deductible donations if you have enough money available to help us with the project. We want to go ahead and construct the educational center that I've had in mind for a long time. Based on what's going on in the outside world, I really think it's time to do that now. And I don't think waiting around is going to be beneficial at this point. So if you can help us locate safe sources of funding for that, I don't know, people with the amount of money that we need. I don't have any of it myself. Most of what Doug and I are doing connected to this project is totally free. There's no money at all in it. We're just trying to do it as a service. But if we get to build that facility, it's going to cost a lot of money, and we can't take it from a venture capital source. We've got to take it from some kind of a benevolent, celebrity or somebody, unknown celebrity with lots of money that wants to help the world. And we want to demonstrate the healing, not by us, but by the body, of all the degenerative diseases, the incurable diseases, to show that's not true, show what goes on with even the diseases that you're not allowed to talk about. And we want to let people come there and experience a level of education and self-healing that hasn't been known for a long time. So if you want to hear the archives of any of our shows, it's at lostartsradio.com or iTunes or Mixcloud or YouTube on our channel there. And if you or anybody that you know can support us and help us get to where we can build this project, we got donate buttons that now go strictly to the Research Institute. They're all totally tax deductible. So you actually get essentially savings back on any money that's donated. And then if you have comments or questions from the shows, you can reach me at richard@lostartsradio.com. I will read them all and I will respond as much as I can within time, the allowable time, or the available time, I should say. And this is Sunday, so next Saturday we're going to be having an incredible show, and then we'll probably be having Dr. Gabriel Cousins in a related discussion on the Sunday show a week from tonight, and I hope that you can join us for both of them. All the details are on lostartsradio.com and on blogtalk.com/lostartsradio. So experiment, have a great week, enjoy the time, and keep learning. We really appreciate you being here with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again by next Saturday morning. And send us a note if you get a chance, richard@lostartsradio.com. Talk to you next time.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/lostartsradio. Visit our website at lostartsradio.com for Richard's weekly focus articles, as well as lots of other really great free educational resources. We also have links to all of the great independent musicians whose music we feature each week on Lost Arts Radio. And if you like Lost Arts Radio, please consider donating a few bucks or leave us a tip to help keep us on the air. We spend many, many hours each week to bring you the best show we can with the best guests around. You can find our donate button on our website at lostartsradio.com.
It's a beauty we can see. It all means nothing without you and me. Only we have this gift inside. To be the love in this world. The height of mountains, depth of seas, all of life's diversity.
Free falling on now, where do I begin? Free falling till the birds forget to sing. But I found you in a crowd of anguish, standing on a solid ground. So sure, like you're holding on to something. Like you've been in love with me for centuries. I see it hang on for me. You've got to hang on for me if I'm gonna hang around for you. Much better now, let's take a look around. Much better